Supervisor Stroud to lead with a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll ask the clerk of the board to read the roll call.
Mr. Conover?
Here.
Mr. Leggett?
here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer? Here. Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier?
Here.
Ms. Smith? Here. Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson? Mr. Merlino? Mr. Stroud?
Here.
Mr. Wild?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Shepler?
Here.
Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Here.
Quorum is established.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 16th, 2021 board minutes? That motion is made by Supervisor Bruno, seconded by Supervisor Shepler. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. Thank you. At this point in time, we have a couple of recognitions that we would like to do. As a quick add-on to our agenda, last month we talked about our leadership badge training and how we offer this to our department heads and also to senior employees that we feel it would be beneficial for. They take many different types of classes. It's also available to all of the supervisors. It is something that does not require an extra cost of the employee or of the county. And we certainly applaud the efforts of both employment and training and HR for putting this program together. So in a very short period of time, we've had 3 additional employees complete this. We've had Roseanne O'Rourke, Deanna Park, and Jackie Figueroa. And while I do not see any of the 3 of them here today, I assume they are online listening, and we wanted to extend our congratulations to you. We'll show you just what that certificate looks like and tell you that you're leading by example, and we certainly appreciate your efforts. So congratulations to the 3 of you for completing your leadership badge training and senior management here in Warren County. Congratulations. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation of Employee of the Month. We're very excited to continue to recognize those employees that go above and beyond. And as much as we'd like to recognize entire departments, we recognize that this is the Employee of the Month. During COVID, we all started to pay much more attention to where we're sitting, where we're walking, how far apart we are from each other, how clean things are. And our janitorial staff during the day, at night, around the clock, continued to work very hard to make sure we were all protected. And sometimes I think we have, for all of us, it's taking a moment to stop and recognize how important their efforts were as well. So at this point in time, we want to take an opportunity, especially with our night crew, to say to them, thank you to Anna, Billy Joe, Deb, Brenda, Stephanie, Lorna, Robert, and Philip. But in particular, we would like to recognize one individual who has gone above and beyond. And to help us recognize them here today, we have our superintendent, Kevin Hajos, and we have, I believe I saw Scott Rogers as well. We'd ask you both to come up to the podium along with our personnel chair, Supervisor Bramer, and County Administrator for the presentation of Employee of the Month.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, supervisors, and guests. Want to just say a few things about Brenda that a lot of people don't know. Brenda's gone over and above in her position, taking on the task of training a few new members, as well as running and overseeing the HSB building during the pandemic, which again, like Madam Chairperson said, that people take for granted the fact that they go home during the day and it's dirty. They come back at night, it's disinfected and it's clean. They come back the next morning and it's all ready to go. The HSB building did host many vaccination sites, and it was made clean every single day with the public and personnel and everything that Brenda did over there. Brenda has been with the county since 2011. Prior to that, she was actually in the Office of the Aging for 15 for 15 years, and she's grown with the county and includes being a cleaner and lead person during vacations and leaves. We feel that she should be recognized during this time as part of a team and a massive asset to the county and the employees within and all the guests that visit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations again, Brenda. At this point in time, I'd like to declare a public hearing open on the possible submission of one or more community development block grants and applications for the current 2021 program year. We would request at this time that the clerk read the public of notice out loud. We will in fact allow privilege of the floor and extend that to anyone who wishes to be heard on this matter after that time.
Warren County will hold a public hearing on Friday, July 16th, 2021 at 10 a.m. in the Warren County Municipal Center located at 1340 State Route 9, Lake George, New York, 12845, for the purpose of hearing public comments on community needs for the county and to discuss the possible submission of one or more development block grant applications for the current 2021 program year. The CDBG program is administered by the New York State Office of Community Renewal and will make available to eligible local governments approximately $20 million in federal fiscal program year 2021 CDBG program funding for housing, economic development, public facilities, public infrastructure, and planning activities with the principal purpose of benefiting low and moderate income persons. The hearing will provide information about the CDBG program and will allow for citizen participation in the development of any proposed grant applications and/or to provide technical assistance to develop alternate proposals. Comments on the CDBG program or proposed projects will be received at this time. The hearing is being conducted pursuant to section 570.486, subpart 1 of the CFR and in compliance with the requirements of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. The location of the public hearing is accessible to persons with disabilities. If special accommodations are needed or for persons with disabilities, those with hearing impairments, or those in need of translation from English, those individuals should contact the clerk of the Board of Supervisors by phone at 518-761-7656 between the hours of 8 and 5 p.m. during regular business days at least 1 week in advance of the hearing, or you can email the clerk of the Board of Supervisors at least 1 week in advance to allow for necessary arrangements. Comments may also be submitted in writing to the clerk of the board, Warren County Municipal Center, 1340 State Route 9, Lake George, New York, 12845. The last date for the county to receive comment is July 19th, 2021, 48 hours after the public hearing date of July 16th, 2021. I have not received any written requests or comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public wishing to be heard regarding this hearing? Are there any comments at all?
Would you like me to speak about the project that we're doing?
That would be great if you wouldn't mind just taking the podium and providing your information for the board and the public.
Chairwoman Sieber and members of the board, and for those who don't know me, my name is Patricia Tadich. I have been a longstanding employee with Warren County, and I'm a planner in the Warren County Planning Department. Someone said to me as I walked in today, well, Pat's here, it must be community development time, and certainly that it is. I'm here today just to speak briefly about the block grant application that we are preparing. You have a handout sheet, an information sheet that I provided the members of the board today. I'll just be brief about this. As many of you know, the County Planning Department has been involved in the Community Development Block Grant Program probably since the early 1980s. And I'm proud to say that given the funding that we've received from the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the New York State Housing Trust Fund Corporation, we've improved, created, renovated, replaced over 2,100 units of housing in our time in doing this type of work. And once again, we find ourselves at somewhat of a crossroads in terms of trying to understand issues related to housing, the availability of housing, particularly for our workforce and for those individuals who desire to have something less than a larger home and desire to downsize to something else. Notwithstanding the temporary housing needs of our seasonal workers, as well as other individuals who find themselves working within the county. This application that we're preparing is going to be for a housing needs assessment as well as a demand analysis. And the information that we'll collect with this particular study, assuming we get funded, will be used in part to supplement the work being done by the Housing Working Group that was formed earlier this year by the Economic Development Corporation of Warren County, of which I serve as a member. So the funding that we are requesting is going to be $46,000, of which we have a local match of $10,000 from the Warren County Local Development Corporation and $10,000 from the EDC. Both are contracted items with a commitment for this. We had initially I had started this with then EDC President Ed Bartholomew, and we were supposed to start this last year, and given the circumstances, that did not take place. But in some respects, I'm kind of glad we waited, because we're finding that there's a lot of issues that are related to COVID in terms of the reduction of the number of homes in our communities that are available for purchase by folks who are worker bees and desire to have something better than they do. So the application will be submitted at the end of July. And we expect to hear by sometime in December for initiation, if we get funded, in January of 2022. They give us a 14-month window to complete this. So I'm actually quite excited about this, because there's a lot of individuals who are speaking about housing, speaking about the needs for housing. And I think the time is right. And I thought we were done doing housing needs analysis, but I guess you never are. And hopefully by that time, we'll also have the census information available to us. So we expect the work that's going to be done is going to be through a consultant. All planning and engineering design work under this particular category have to be done by consultant services. So the planning department will be the technical supporting arm for any work that is done. So I just thought I'd give you a brief kind of, introduction to what we are doing, what's going on. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them either now, or you could contact me at the office.
Yeah, more of a comment.
Supervisor Conlon.
First of all, let me just say, if the chairwoman would indulge me, that for me, this has the very highest priority that it could possibly have. A lot of the rural communities, speaking on behalf of a lot of the lake communities, but even the non-lake communities, a lot of our housing is being taken up with converted over to STR, short-term rental. We have a big need for employee housing, seasonal housing. And so for me, this is a very, very important question. I think it's a very timely time to be doing this. And just let me extend to you, if there's anything that the committee needs or you need going forward that the town of Bolton can be of assistance with, please don't hesitate to call me. I'd be happy to take whatever it is to my board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bramer, then
Thank-
Supervisor Driscoll, then Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I think this is also critically important for our area. And of course, I understand the circumstances of last year with Mr. Bartholomew dying and the whole COVID scenario, but I'm disappointed to hear that we didn't move forward. Like, we really need to have a better understanding of the housing availability out there, and where there is the potential to draw in someone from outside to say, hey, we've got enough need here that you could build something. and we'll be able to fill it for you. And so I'd really like to see us go forward, even if we don't get this $46,000. I mean, how can we move this forward without waiting until January of 2022? We've already been waiting a whole year. I thought that there was an opportunity to leverage what the town of Queensbury had already started. They already have their needs assessment.
Right.
So
Right.
I'd really like to see us go forward with that. I mean, it's good to go after the grant money, but this is really important for people who live and work here.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I would concur with my colleagues who have already spoken. About 30% of the housing units in Warren County are rental units. More and more, it's difficult for working families to find affordable housing. Waiting lists at multi-unit complexes are a mile long and not getting any shorter. We're living in a time when the cost of housing for homeowners is out of this world. So it's timely, it's necessary, and it's necessary throughout the county, not just in the Greater Glens Falls, Queensbury areas, but certainly up in the North Country. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pat, a couple of questions. The first being, is this countywide?
It is. We are actually probably not going to work specifically with the city of Glens Falls, but they are conducting some information. They're identifying information and doing some inventorying right now. Since last July, Mayor Hall has asked me to serve on his working group, and I do that as a volunteer, as a resident of the city of Glens Falls. And the topic of housing, which we meet like faithfully every Tuesday, is certainly high on our list, along with the South Street DRI and the projects that are going there. But certainly, I've got to say a big thanks to Larry Regan from Broad Street Commons, who graciously provided the market study from Broad Street Commons to help us work to use as a part of our assessment. Now, that being said, our focus was going to be, on North Country communities, on the hamlets. I have spoken at length with Stu Baker from the town of Queensbury. He's excited to be a part of this, as well as Beth Giles from the Regional Planning Board, who's going to work on they're doing an inventory with funding that they believe they're going to be receiving from the northern borders. And so if you look at the composite of our working relationship with the city, what we're going to do with the town of Queensbury and even the Regional Planning Board, I think we have a great group of people and talented professionals who I think we could bring some wonderful information forward. So this was, we certainly, as Supervisor Bramer said, somewhat of a disappointment that we didn't launch this earlier, but we sort of have been working on information and data. And I'm hopeful that the census will sort of bolster anything that we do to collect local information. So I think there's the notion that we have a number of people who are coming together to work on this, I think is pretty important. And I think it'll benefit our communities and developers who want to, answer the question, if we build this, will we fill it? So that's part of this whole, project that we're working on. So
Thank you, Pat. That's a
Yeah.
great answer. My second one and final, 46,000. Is that enough to get this done? Is that limited by what the state is allowing
Well,
for the grant? And can we, along with Supervisor Bramer's idea about moving this forward quicker, is there additional funding that might be needed to make this happen?
Please bear in mind that I think I had mentioned it, and it's in your little handout. We do have another 20,000 from that's a composite of 10,000 from Warren County LDC and 10,000 from the EDC. So actually, we've got 20 on top of that, 46. that we're requesting. So we're up to that $66,000 mark. And before, I don't think we need to go overboard and with undue enrichment for the study until we go out and find out what we need and detail the list of tasks to be done. So I think truthfully, that's the 66, should we get the 46 is a terrific start point without, going overboard on that number.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you,
Mhm.
Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point in time, without hearing anything else, we will close that public hearing. Moving on to our next one, declaring a public hearing open for the proposed adoption of a tentative operating budget for the Adirondack Community College for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022. At this point in time, I would request that our clerk of the board read the notice of public hearing out loud.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Warren, New York is considering the adoption of a tentative operating budget for Adirondack Community College for fiscal year 2021 through 2022. Notice is further given that pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors on June 16, 2021, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Supervisors on July 16, 2021 at 10 a.m. in the Supervisors' Rooms at the Warren County Municipal Center located at 1340 State Route 9, Queensbury, New York, at which time and place all persons interested in the matter of such proposed budget will be heard concerning same. A copy of the tentative operating budget for Adirondack Community College for fiscal year 2021 through 2022 is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the clerk of the Board of Supervisors at the above stated address and may be viewed on the Warren County website.
Thank you. At this point in time, is there anyone here who would like to be heard regarding this? At this point in time, we will then close this public hearing, hearing no comments. We'll move on to our report by committee chairs. It's certainly been a busy month, and I appreciate once again all the hard work by our members and our chairs. To give you a brief overview from my perspective over the last month and what I've done as chair of your board to represent all 20 of our municipalities. Most recently, I attended our National Association of Counties Conference. I attended as a voting delegate, but I attended with members of our board, our clerk of the board, Amanda Allen, Supervisors Leggett and Supervisors McGowan. This took place from July 8th to returning on July 13th. On July 8th, I also participated in county attorney interviews and was part of our NISAC New York delegation update. On top of that, I attended all of the committee meetings, both our special committee meetings and subcommittees. During the NACO conference, I attended multiple trainings, those focused on effective communication, barriers for women in government, leadership and management training, broadband, multiple meetups regarding the ARPA funding for the American Rescue Plan, and had an opportunity to meet with members throughout the country, along with several members from our New York delegation and our Northeast caucus. One of those opportunities that arose, and I wanted to share with you today during effective communications, was how we as a board, as a group, interact with our public as it relates to the ARPA dollars. That's something that we have approximately 2 years to allocate and to come up with a plan where we will be hopefully impacting all aspects of our community. One suggestion that other counties have implemented is a survey that we would provide to the public. We talked last month about wanting to engage our public to the best of our abilities. And we recognize that while we meet periodically and we ask people to Zoom in and watch through YouTube Live or to join us here in person, and we certainly appreciate that, we'd like to go above and beyond. And with doing so, follow the lead of some of our counterparts out west. And one of those approaches have been to provide a survey opportunity to our public to ask them, based on eligible expenses and how we can utilize these dollars, what their ideas would be. So I'm proud to announce that next week we will lead with a page on our website regarding the ARPA dollars and how they can be used, but also a survey that will be publicized and sent out to all members of the public, which they can certainly, they can answer that anonymously. They could answer it with their contact information, but we'll be asking them for their thoughts on how we could best utilize the approximate $12 million coming into Warren County. I'm very grateful that our county treasurer, Mike Swan, and our budget officer, Frank Thomas, have both agreed to act as appointed public liaisons with the ARPA dollars. They will be available to answer questions if someone's not able to commit or to complete a survey. Perhaps they don't have the internet capability or the resources to be able to fill that survey out online. We'll provide hard copies of that here at the county, should a member of the public like a hard copy, and provide phone numbers. And we'll be using our Warren County Strong email to also allow other comments. But these ideas that will come in from the public will be put into a spreadsheet. Mike Colvin has done an incredible job working with us from IT in a very short amount of time to come up with a way that we can then share these results with our board. But first and foremost, it's talking to the public. As we all know, we're accountable to them. In addition to that, I thank both Supervisor Beatty as Finance Chair and Supervisor Hogan as Chairwoman of Economic Growth and Development, who will be working directly with the board. They will be asking for all of your ideas, concerns, comments, in any way. Certainly, you're all already experts on ARPA and how we can be looking at a lot of that. The guidance that we were notified by NISAC probably will never become final, but we do have interim guidance that we can use. And so we'll be compiling all of your ideas as experts in your communities from a municipality perspective and how we can utilize those dollars. And lastly, County Administrator Moore and Personnel Chair Supervisor Bramer will work directly with all of our employees and our department heads to ask them how they feel those list of eligible expenses could maximize their departments and also help to benefit the county. That is our first step. We will leave that survey and that process of responding open for approximately 2 weeks. It's a lofty goal, but hopefully we'll hear a lot from everyone on ideas that you might have as it relates to the county-wide initiatives. After that point in time, we'll get back together and talk a little bit more about how to formalize an advisory group and a working group that would take those ideas and continue to look at ways to implement and maximize those ARPA funds. So again, a direct result from being able to collaborate with members across the country and a best practice. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that here in the near future. And you will all be sure to get that press announcement when it goes out next week and start working on compiling those ideas. In addition to the NACO conference and our committee meetings here, we had many members of our board, and I'm so grateful for your willingness when asked. And as by now you can tell, I'm a big delegator. So we had members all over the county in the last month as Warren County has reopened. We've had ribbon cuttings and events and representation at many different things. In particular, as we celebrated Weowaka and the retreat right here in Lake George, the Glen in Queensbury, Krantz Cottage in Lake George just this past week, the Reardon Cup, who, so many organizations are working very hard to raise funds for the Ronald McDonald House to have the first ever retreat in our neck of the woods. It's just amazing to have that in Lake George, and we're so happy to be able to provide that assistance. And certainly Mayor Blaze led the way with that. We've had representatives at the Girl Scouts in a flag raising ceremony at the Liberty Bell to offer congratulations to Rachel Gardner with domestic violence, and new businesses like the Bond in Warrensburg and many other events. So thank you for saying yes when asked and to providing that representation on behalf of all of our communities. If that wasn't enough, we added 2 special committees to all of our work every single month. And I know we're so proud to represent our constituents. So I want to thank once again Supervisor Bramer for taking the lead with the septic initiatives, and to Supervisors Diamond and Bruno in the ethics revision. They've worked incredibly hard with many members of our staff and many of you to come up with what I hope you'll all find an acceptable compromise with our financial filing forms that Supervisor Diamond will describe during his committee report. I've also attended the LDC meetings, the CVB meetings, our hospitality and economic work group. I want to call to your attention and congratulate Mark Bien. Mark Bien is an award recipient from the Adirondack Regional Chamber for the 32nd Annual Walter Juckett Community Service Award. And in our incredible partner, Mike Biddle, President and CEO of our Adirondack Regional Council, he has highlighted Mark's community commitment, his dedication to charitable events, and his leadership. We will be presenting a proclamation October 29th, and I hope you can all join ARCC to celebrate Mark Bien's contributions to Warren County at that point in time. Last month, we attended Intercounty. Many of us did, or many members throughout the Adirondacks, but Supervisor Hogan and Amanda Allen, as our clerk representing all of us, we all went up to Clinton County and had a very informative meeting regarding broadband. And before we provided an example of a resolution that we had passed here, and in economic next week, you will also hear another resolution out of Intercounty. I say this because we are hosts this month of Intercounty. And so you've all hopefully seen your email from Ms. Allen asking you to take a look at that. And if you're available next Thursday to join us as we hear from representatives that talk more about issues and legislative initiatives in our region and toward different local businesses with 12 other Adirondack communities. And lastly, I would just like to call your attention to a proclamation. This proclamation is in your packet today. I appreciate Supervisor Driscoll's advocacy on formally recognizing, of course, our public health has gone above and beyond, and rightfully so, to recognize and celebrate the life of Joan Grushkoff. In your packet today, you have a proclamation, and I won't read it all out loud. I know we have put this on our public website. It's before you today, but what we would really like to be able to do, and I know Supervisor Frazier, as chair of that committee, will talk a little bit more about some efforts to recognize Joan's selflessness and dedication to Warren County. But we will hopefully at the end of today be declaring July 1st, which was Joan's hire date, the very first time we ever had a public health director, as Joan Grushkoff Day here in Warren County moving forward. So that proclamation is in your packet for your consideration today. And with that, I think I've told you enough about what's been going on from my perspective the last month, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts and sharing with the public all of your hard work. So if we could please start with our committee reports. Supervisor Beatty, our catch-all committee did not have a need to meet this month, but I know Finance and Governmental Operations and Advocacy did.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I always start off the meeting with Mr. Swan. Mike's obviously our treasurer, and he gives us an update from the money department.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see almost a full house for a change. A few things I just want to run over with you. First, sales tax. I'll be honest with you. The increases I'm seeing are scaring me because I'm afraid of the adjustments that may come down the road. And I can't see any trending that points to the amount of increases that we're seeing. I mean, I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I'm nervous about it, what may come down the road. The occupancy tax, we're seeing some huge increases over 2020 up until about June 15th. But when I go back to 2019, excuse me, we're up about 1.6% from 19. So we're still showing an increase, but it's just because the spring of last year was pretty bad. So I don't really want to compare what we're collecting this year to 2020. I'd rather go back to 19 because I think that gives us a better base of where we're going. Any questions about that? Okay, Countryside and the retaining wall in Bolton by Sagamore. When we were talking in committee about funding Countryside, I kind of forgot about the Baltimore or the retaining wall in Bolton. So that's why I'm kind of backtracking on my statements at that time, saying that I felt we should take that money out of our fund balance for Countryside. I don't want to take almost $2 million out of our fund balance to do both projects. So that's why I'm recommending, and I will be asking at finance to give me the authority to borrow about 1.7 million for those two projects. Now, and there was some concern that of lumping this into these two projects into one thing. There is nothing, it's no different than just taking the money out of the general fund. Once we get the loan, the money goes into the separate accounts that fund each one of those projects. There's no intermingling of the funds, and it will go forward. So I kind of apologize for misleading on that originally, but that's where I think we should be now, and for the funding on that. Any questions, concerns about that? Okay. And along with borrowing the money, doing a 5-year ban for that, I just want to give you a couple of quick things. Warren County is in pretty good financial shape. Our debt to revenue ratio is one of the lowest in the state, okay, which is phenomenal. Our overall equalized property tax rate is one of the lowest in the state also. So that's another good thing. That shows that this board and the people that work here have been doing their due diligence in making this county fiscally responsible. And I just want to put that out there just for everybody to understand that. And borrowing this $1.7 million, it's going to put us, by the time actually we start paying this off, we're going to be paying off other debt. So it really is going to be almost a wash dollar-wise in the budget process. Questions?
Any questions for the treasurer?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. Okay, in your packet today, finance, we met on June 29th. There's resolutions 257, 258, and also 288, 296. They're fairly self-explanatory. 257's the supplemental appropriations. 258's the amending the county budget for various departments within the county. That's a monthly, that's always a monthly resolution. 288, if you turn to that. I put on my glasses. There'll be a roll call vote on the appropriation of funds from the rehab county buildings reserve to the buildings budget to cover the cost of the generator swap out for the human services building. So we're going to need a roll call vote on that. We'll also 289's canceling or correcting of assessments and refunds or chargebacks of taxes. 290 will also be a roll call vote. That's increasing the capital project county bridge and culvert projects, and it's authorizing the transfer of funds and amending the county budget. So that'll be roll call. 291 will be another roll call vote. That's from the DPW, increasing capital project H396, East River Drive and Call Street rehabilitation, authorizing transfer of funds. Obviously, whenever we do that, we have to have a roll call vote. 292 will also be a roll call vote. That's authorizing the appropriation of funds from the county railroad repair reserve to the railroad budget to cover the cost of a well pump. 293 will also be a roll call. That's from planning and community development, establishing the community development fund, CD 76 countryside renovations, authorizing transfer of funds, amending the county budget. And again, whenever we amend the county budget, we have to do a roll call vote. 294, also from planning and community development. We're going to need a roll call vote on that also, as we're authorizing the appropriation of funds from the general fund, unappropriated surplus to the planning and community development budget. 295 will also be roll call vote, and that's authorizing the appropriation of funds from the general fund, unappropriated surplus to the countryside rehabilitation reserve upon award of the grant from the New York State Housing Trust Fund Office of Community, amending the county budget after the mailing. And 296 will also be a roll call. That's adopting and approving the Adirondack Community College operating budget for fiscal 2022. And that's all the items that came out of finance this past month. A lot of roll call votes as we're amending the county budget on numerous different resolutions. Government ops did not meet, but we will be meeting Monday, and we have a fairly full agenda, so anybody, I invite any and all to come. It's noon on Monday. And we'll be talking about the fireworks. Supervisor Dickinson has asked that we talk about the fireworks law. And we also have some information from our Board of Elections commissioners. Okay, Madam Chairwoman, that's it, and I thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Beatty. There is one point of clarification our county administrator would just like to ask you about in relation to resolution 295.
Sure.
Yeah, just in relation to the treasurer's comments, I was wondering if we were proposing to pull resolution 295 or whether maybe we wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, we would want to pull that because that's specifically just for one of the two items.
Right.
So very good catch. Pertaining to Mr. Swan's now wanting to band it together, which makes sense. I would request that we withdraw that resolution.
A motion to withdraw resolution 295 Supervisor Beatty.
Yes.
Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Thomas. Second. Supervisor Thomas.
Oh, I froze.
No, previously we had talked about borrowing money to pave highways. I was wondering where that stands, because that's been released.
Sure.
I
Administrator.
I don't believe we had to do that based on the volume of work that we did this year, but the superintendent is here and between the superintendent and the treasurer, I think they may be able to answer any specifics on that.
Super. Whomever would like to answer, please join us at the microphone.
So last year, we were asked to put a 2-year program together for road projects. As you recall, during the project process, I came up with about $9.8 million worth of projects. This year, we decided based on our program that it was going to be an overlay, mill and fill, kind of a preservation type year. So what we had budgeted for last year in the budget covered whatever work that we had to do this year. In fact, we've had some savings in the projects that we're going to try to do a couple other things this year. Going into next year, we're going to need somewhere probably in the vicinity of about $6.5 to $6.8 million. Now, as far as borrowing it, I don't know where that comes from. There's also been talk of using the federal money that has come into the county that we could use that for our road budget as well, our road projects.
And from my perspective on that, I mean, I think it's fair to say that for the strength of the projects themselves, it made sense to do certain phases this year and to do heavier construction phases next year. The plan, I believe, is still to get the same amount of miles done. It was just a question of when you do which phase.
It will. And again, last year when I brought it through committee to talk about our projects for the next couple of years, we're on this plan of doing a preservation type project 1 year and then the following year catching up on some of the reconstruction type projects. Preservation projects are cheaper. They can get us farther, but the reconstructions will definitely cost us more. But so every other year it's going to be preservation and then the following year will be a reconstruction again.
The philosophy, as far as I'm concerned, would be the same, though, that we would intend to catch up on all these projects. We have the same cash. The goal is to get to the same cash outlay every year from the county to preserve our roads. And we have to do an additional outlay initially to catch up. So it's the same issue that we had last year with the budget is if we commit to doing those extra miles, are we going to borrow for it or are we going to use another source for it? But that is still the intention, is to keep with that plan.
Well, that's my issue, because I want to get the budget time. If we're going to borrow money, then let's borrow it. All I'm saying, I want to stay on Kevin's good graces here, or 23
Harrisburg's being done this year.
Supervisor Thomas, those are good questions. Treasurer Swan, would you like to add any additional information in response to Supervisor Thomas?
Well, we started the process last year to borrow some money to do this, and Kevin and I had some discussions and decided that it wasn't the appropriate time for him to get the money to do the work. when we get into budget time, if that's what the decision of the board is, I'll go out and find the money. That I just need to be informed of what the plan is. I mean, if we're going to take the money out of the federal money, that's great. If we're going to borrow the money, that's fine too, but I'll do whatever the board wants me to get done. And I just need at the budget time when it's all straightened around, we'll do it.
Does that answer your question, Supervisor Thomas? And to both our superintendent and treasurer, I would encourage you to reply to the emails that will be sent out to all employees on the ARPA funding and ideas. Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, you know, if, to keep the ball rolling in a forward motion, and the both of you are up there, I mean, we talked about some federal money coming in, you know, and vice versa. Is there any prepayment penalties for borrowing that money if we get enough money where we can, you know, pay part of that loan down for some of these projects to keep things moving forward? Is that a possibility or?
Well, if I do a short-term note, which is what I would prefer to do, it's a bond anticipation note, that's over a 5-year period. You can pay it off at 1 year, you can pay it off at 2 years, 3 years, or you have to pay it off in the 5th year. So yes, you can early pay it off and there's no penalty. There's actually a savings for interest.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Supervisor Conover.
Thank you. So do we need to amend this resolution or just withdraw? That's, I guess, the question is in front of, do we need to amend it to authorize the treasurer? Do we need to authorize the treasurer to do short-term borrowing relative to this like he's recommending, or
I
do we
would
just withdraw?
I would suggest withdraw and let me go to finance. That's my plan, is to go to finance to start the ball rolling. As far as getting permission and the resolutions in place to give me the authorization to borrow the money.
Just one other thing, because I think my sense right now in terms of the point in time is that if given where interest rates are at and the work that's out in front of us that needs to happen here, it may be an opportune time to do more over the 5-year period, knowing full well that it's not going to have any budgetary impact. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. And if that's the pleasure, and if that's what we want to do, I can get started on that whenever the board gives me the authority to do it. So if that's a discussion we want to have at finance, or I'm more than willing to do that. However you supervisors want to proceed, you know, I will take care of that. I just been kind of sitting back, honestly, waiting to see where we're going with the highway money, to see what I need to do.
Thank you. I think at this point, to help facilitate this discussion along, we have a motion on the floor to withdraw resolution 295. We've had a second and we're during discussion. It sounds as if it will be on the agenda of Supervisor Beatty for our upcoming finance meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll put it on.
If that is, you know, without objection, I would prefer to call the vote on this if there's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That carries. Please remove resolution 295 from your packet. Thank you, Treasurer Swan. Moving on, Supervisor Bramer, Personnel, Administration, Higher Education, and our Special Committee on our septic inspection.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Before I get started with our meeting and resolutions, I know that Dr. Duffy just walked in. If you have any updates, we do have a resolution before us to pass the SUNY Adirondack operating budget. It's resolution 296. If anyone has any questions, or do you want to say anything, Dr. Duffy? Without objection from the Chairwoman and the board.
Dr. Duffy, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see everyone, as I keep saying, in 3D. So nice to see everyone. Thank you for your patience. We just came from Washington County, where they voted unanimously for our budget. And you have before you today our budget for 2021-2022, which had already been discussed at our joint committee meetings back in early June. We believe it's a very responsible budget. We're very pleased to be able to offer a budget that provides no tuition increase for our students. As you know, our most vulnerable populations have been hit the hardest in COVID. The largest drop we've seen in enrollment are our students who are under-resourced. So we wanted to try to make this upcoming tuition cost as low as possible to help more students to be able to afford higher education. This was a difficult year for everyone, including us. We made some very difficult decisions. So the budget you have in front of you has some sacrifices, but we think it's a responsible budget to continue to provide high quality education for our students and to return to more in-person instruction and activities. Requires us to be able to fund things a little bit differently than we did this year. So we appreciate your support. There's a modest increase from both counties. And as I said, Washington County just voted unanimously in support, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions. And I also have Anne Marie here for things that I don't know how to answer very well. So
Thank you. Are there questions for Dr. Duffy this morning? Hearing none, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Duffy and Anne Marie, for being here in person. We love seeing you. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we have ongoing union negotiations. As you guys already know, we did go through the CSEA negotiations, and since the last full board meeting, we've had initial rounds with Alliance and PBA, and I think those have gone well. I'm happy to report that. Nothing on today's agenda, though, as far as that goes. We did meet on June 29th for our regular committee meeting, and you'll see resolutions in your packet starting at 281. There are some usual personnel issues. There were a couple related to the opioid litigation. I don't think there is anything new on that, but maybe Mr. Terwilliger can update us during his report if there is anything. And also I wanted to point your attention to 287, which has to do with the occupancy tax revenues. Basically, the reason that came through our committee is because it had to do with the contract that is attached to the resolution for all of our event funding venues. And so we changed that a little bit to make it so that the contract would be in a form approved by the county attorney. And that came up from occupancy tax committee over to personnel committee and passed through our committee. I don't think there were any questions on that. There will still be some changes that need to go back through occupancy tax with respect to the particular criteria, but that'll be headed up by Supervisor Garrity. So that's that one. I also want to mention that during that committee meeting, we had a short discussion about whether or not it was the consensus of the committee to continue on with discussions about compensation for our employees during the pandemic. So some type of compensation for the work done in 2020, and we will be continuing that discussion. I'll be working with Treasurer Swan on that. Also, from the Public Defender's Office, we do need to revise the start date of one of the new employees that will be in there. I don't know if that needs to come up through this at this time or later to change that one particular resolution. Marcy's here to answer any questions on that if needed. We met again, the committee met again on July 8th, and the purpose of that was to conduct our initial round of interviews for the county attorney. I thought that went very well. We had good candidates present. We didn't have a lot of supervisors there, so I would ask that if people are interested, that they come to the second round of interviews so that you get a chance to put your eyeballs on all the candidates and see them for yourselves. And I'm working with Ms. Figueroa on setting up a date for our second round of interviews there. Do you have any questions on that, or the candidates, please see me. And finally, yesterday, the Special Septic Committee did meet. I thought that went very well. We had a very sincere discussion about how to move forward and how it could work and what our ideas are for just public policy around the issue. And definitely a major point that came out of that was educating the public, making sure that they understand what we think is the importance for protecting not only our water bodies, also consumer health and protecting their drinking water of their wells near septic systems. So I'm hoping that a lot of what will come out of this is education for our public and a local law that will help us move forward in a consistent and fair and simple fashion. I think that's everything I have for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bramer. If you don't mind at this time, let's handle the amendment to Resolution 281 in the interest of our public defender. She's incredibly busy, and I'd hate to have you spend the next couple hours with us for this particular amendment. If you wouldn't mind, Ms. Flores, just a brief overview of the requested change. It's very simple.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
I am requesting to have the start date be Monday, July 19th instead of August 1st. I didn't have space before to put this person, the part-time position. However, I have a resignation. That resignation is effective at 5 o'clock today. And if by changing the start date of this to July 19th, I will be able to hire someone on Monday to get going and keep things moving. It is, the funding is all ILS funding, no county funding. It's a part-time position. It is 24 hours each week and all ILS funding. And we have it under the Harrell hearing and it's under year 3.
Thank
I'll
you.
make that motion, Chairwoman.
May I just ask for a point of clarification? Is it for both of these positions, Marcy, that you both?
I really only need that amended date for the part-time assistant public defender, not the part-time coordinating assistant public defender. So just the one position, please.
Okay.
It's 40-something thousand
Correct.
salary.
Understood. So we're looking to amend that motion from an August 1st start date to a July 19th. And is
Thank
that the motion you would like to make?
Amend, yes, amend resolution 281 to that effect.
Okay, so resolution 281, changing the date from August 1 for an effective date to July 19th. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Resolution 281 now remains amended. Thank you, Supervisor Bramer. Supervisor Conover, Public Works.
Thank you. Public Works met on June 22nd, represented in your packet by resolution 273 through 279. Most of this is straightforward. I would want to bring to your attention, especially resolution 273. And because I think 273, that's where the county reimburses the towns for the work that the towns do, snow plowing and taking care of county roads. And the towns throughout the county take care of, in round numbers, approximately 150 miles of county roads across a very large geographic area. And it really, I think, really represents just a terrific, wonderful working relationship between the municipalities, the towns, and the county. And you can imagine across such a broad geographic area how what the cost would be for the county to build buildings and buy tandems and staff those tandems and material, and even the siting of the facilities would be a long, drawn out, very expensive process. So in that vein, I would be remiss as a town supervisor as well to not say to our budget officer, Frank, if there was a year when the county could consider taking another look at, and Kevin taking another look at the reimbursement formula, and costs have gone up, and if we could treat our towns a little better, that would be a great thing. And it's really important. I mean, it's important to everyone, but some of our smaller towns that have 30 or even 40 miles of county roads that they're taking care of, even a small increase means a lot of money. And Frank, I know you have quite a few miles in your town. I know Thurman has quite a few miles, as does Chester. If you could kind of put that on your radar for next year's budget, it'd be much appreciated. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Conover. Supervisor Diamond, today reporting on public safety as well as our Ethics Financial Disclosure Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Public Safety Committee met in June. We have one resolution in your packet today, looking for your approval. That's Resolution 272. It's asking the board to appoint members of the Warren County Traffic and Safety Board. The advisory committee, well, let me backtrack a little bit. That back at the last full board meeting, we had a discussion around, and we adopted some modifications and changes to our ethics law. It was also discussed at that point in time and introduced was a short form that to be considered by this full board here. The reaction to the short form, it appeared to me that we needed to do a little bit more work. So at that time, Madam Chair formed an advisory committee asking for volunteers. Supervisor Leggett, Supervisor Garrity, Supervisor Bruno, Supervisor Bramer, and myself volunteered to sit down and take a look at the foreclosure law and see if we can create a law that references Warren County, or specializes in Warren County, because each county with over 50,000 people, I believe that's the statute, has the ability to develop their own financial disclosure statement and ethics code. So we did that. We put some notes on the paper. We met yesterday and we went through line by line. I apologize to some of my colleagues here today that haven't had a chance to read it in detail. The size of the document really hasn't changed. It's still 5 to 6 pages long. What we're trying to do is make it a little bit simpler but effective to the 80 people that, whether they're elected or appointed or employees of Warren County, to make it a little bit easier for them to fill it out. Because at some point in time, when the chairwoman makes her appointments to the ethics board, each member of the board is going to have to review that document. That's close to about 480 pages. So what we've done here is we've gone through it. We've made some minor changes. The next step in the process would be to schedule a public hearing. It's still in draft form, and ask the public to weigh in on that. And at that point in time, if any of the supervisors that haven't had a chance or participate yesterday's meeting, we can include your discussion into formalizing and approving a final review, final financial disclosure statement, if it's the privilege of the board here. So I would like to say, though, that, I want to thank Supervisors Garrity, Leggett, Bruno, and Bramer for their hard work and passion, along with the acting county attorney, Robert Terwilliger, who's been here and involved since day one on this. When we initially started talking about this, we were discussing this when we were taking a look at our nepotism law, and we try to include in this document points of interest that everybody had. So I'd like to quote one of my colleagues here on the board, Ron Conover. He mentioned at the last full board meeting that we had, he says, anything can be improved if you're willing to work at it. And that is true in this case. And I take a look at this financial disclosure statement, and I think we're there, but we did it as a committee. And again, I want to thank the advisory committee to adopting it and moving it to the full board, which ultimately we go to a public hearing for review and come back to the full board. So that concludes my report. If any of the supervisors that just are reading this at this point in time, feel free to give me a call. I'll try to give you our perspective on some of the minor changes. A lot of them are just language changes. The full document is a Schedule A is the actual law. Schedule B is a financial disclosure. And Schedule C, which there are no changes, is in addition to the financial disclosure to the appendix of B. So there are no changes there. We've made some changes at the last meeting to the code itself. And the last document now is to be approved is the financial disclosure. So that concludes my report today. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to bring it up to me, or we can discuss it when we set the public hearing. I'm going to be asking to come from the floor vote to waive the rules so we could schedule a public hearing in August. So that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Diamond, would you like to address the waiving the rules now or at the time of the resolutions?
It's entirely up to your choice.
And if, without objection, I would like to continue to move forward with our committee reports, and we'll start off our resolution discussion with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson, is he on video? He's not here. Our Vice Chair of Environmental Concerns and Real Property, is that Supervisor Bramer? Would you like to give a brief report on environmental concerns and real property taxes for the public?
Sure. Let me just see if there's any resolutions. I can't remember if we brought anything forward. Our last meeting, I don't think so. You're on that with me. No, I don't see anything. I know we're still dealing with the Johnsburg property. I think is the most pressing, and then the foreclosure.
Supervisor Bramer.
We did have the last chance meeting. I'm sorry. We did have the last chance meeting this past Monday. That was our most recent committee meeting. We had 3 individuals, and our real property director did a great job working with all of them. And I think that they've got set up now plans to pay in September. And then one was a very complicated estate matter. And we've actually given them an entire year to come up with a resolution and be able to pay their taxes by next year. So I think that's our update there.
Great. Thank you for filling in for that. Supervisor Driscoll, Human Services.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. The Human Services Committee met on Monday, June 21st. From that meeting came one resolution, Resolution 270, which is a simple continuation of services with Mahoney Notify Plus, Inc. and the Countryside Adult Home. The next meeting will be Monday, July 19th at or about 11:10 a.m. And please note that the Economic Growth and Development Committee is now meeting on Tuesdays to maybe free up some time on Mondays. So if you're on that committee, you're here Tuesday. I had the opportunity yesterday to attend the Liberty Bell ceremony. In addition to my colleague at Catholic Charities, Rachel Gardner, who is the recipient of 2021 every and all healthcare provider, volunteer representing Warren County was recognized for 2020. Receiving that award on behalf of a long list of individuals is our very own Janelle Jones. And again, she didn't miss any of the providers from all walks of life, doctors, nurses, EMS workers, law enforcement, everyone who's had a part in preventing the issue that we've been working on for the last year with COVID. I'll also remind people to take a look at the COVID alerts that we get every morning and afternoon. We've taken down the partitions. Most of us have attended community events, but we still have a ways to go, and we still have to practice good common sense and distancing and encouraging our friends and neighbors to get vaccinated. I know that there's some couple of North Country vaccinations in Brant Lake and in North Creek coming up this week, and as well as the Take a Bite in downtown Glens Falls this Wednesday afternoon from 5 to 7, I believe. So thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Frazier with Health Services.
Thank you. The Health Services Committee met on June the 21st. We had reports from Office of the Aging and the Office of Public Health. And as a result of that meeting, we have 4 resolutions, 266 and 269. 3 are from Public Health. 1 is from Office of the Aging. 266 is amending resolution number 315 of 2020, authorizing submission of a grant application to the New York State Department of Health Grants Administration Health Research Institute. 267 is authorizing submission of a grant application to the New York State Department of Health Research Institute to enable Warren County school districts and daycare centers to establish COVID-19 testing and screening in order to maintain in-person learning. 268 is authorizing renewal amendment agreement with strategic healthcare programs. And 269 is authorizing submission of a grant application to the New York State Office for the Aging New York Connects Expansion and Enhancement Program. So we'd appreciate your support on that. And I'm going to ask Janelle Jones to give us she has a few comments to make about what we'd like to do to honor Joan Grishcott. So I'm going to ask her to make those comments. But if I'm not mistaken, Janelle, you were hired by Joan, were you not? And you work for Joan. So to me, it's very appropriate for her to make comments about what we're going to try to do to honor her. So if you don't mind doing that, thank you, Janelle.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here and allowing me to be here for such a special topic that's near and dear to my heart. As you all know, Joan passed, and I want to thank the chairwoman for the proclamation, and I'm very excited to celebrate July 1st as Joan Grishcott Day for the rest of my years here. And I already have ideas turning in my head about inviting retirees to come for a special picnic on that day to celebrate that day, as she would love to have us do. And she'd probably be there with us in spirit. I have two resolution requests that I'm wanting to bring. Well, it's one request. I'm trying to use my resources wisely as a good Girl Scout and put them on the same miscellaneous form because it's for the same cause. Joan Grishcott worked for our agency for over 30 years. She was our first health director, as you know. She hired some of us that are still down there. I attended the Liberty Bell presentation yesterday, as Mr. Supervisor Driscoll mentioned, and Dr. Ruggie provided an eloquent eulogy in a way, but a celebration of what she's done for our community. She basically has built our healthcare system in Warren County. Where there was a gap, she used herself to fill that gap and use the resources around her to work together. She was like a quilter, bringing everybody in to make a seamless transition for our people in Warren County, whether it be childcare, whether it be care for prenatal, postpartum people, or whether it be just general public for whatever reason. So with that in mind, my resolution request is basically asking me to have the authorization to work with Kevin Hajos and DPW to come up with a nice commemorative plaque for our building, with a silhouette of Joan and her dates and a tribute to what she did for our agency, in addition to finding a special tree and a special place to plant that in her memory and honor of what she's done for our community. So I will be discussing that in my committee meeting on Monday. But I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up and ask for your support for that, because we're really excited to do this on behalf of Joan and all the good that she's done in our community. I also attended her funeral, which was very special, very quaint. And, you know, for somebody that had no children, she certainly adopted many of us down in health services, but it was very evident when her niece from Montana came, which was her only family member that was there. She had so many friends that were there, and so many wonderful things were said about her. It was very nice and uplifting to be a part of that. And thank you.
Thank you, Janelle, and for all of your hard work to making sure that we continually remember all those people that have made such an incredible impact, but particularly Joan.
Thank you again, Janelle, and that's my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Frazier. Supervisor Garrity, at this time, I'd like to ask you to report on tourism and occupancy tax, but also on Parks O&M in place of our chair and our vice chair, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Thank you.
On Tourism Committee, we met once. We have one resolution. It's 280, and that's the award funding to Ice Capsules, which is a multiple month event that will be held at Wood Park this year. So we have a resolution authorizing $50,000 of occupancy tax money for that. The rest of the report has already been given. And then on the Parks O&M, resolution 271 sets the rates for Ice Castles to use Wood Park for over several months. So those are the two resolutions I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Hogan is on Zoom with us here today. The governor had ended any remote participation in meetings on June 24th. And as such, while she can't physically be here today, she has called in to provide her committee report, which is allowable under our open meeting laws. Supervisor Hogan for Economic Growth and Development.
Hi. Can you guys see and hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning. Economic Growth and Development met on June 21st. We heard from Liza Oxendorf with the Employment and Training Administration and all the good work she's doing, and we voted to approve reappointment members to the Workforce Development Board. We also heard from County Planning on that day. They've been hard at work with multiple grant applications on behalf of communities throughout Warren County. And they've been working with facilities to arrange improvements to Countryside. So thank you to planning for all of your hard work. We have several resolutions in front of you today, and I hope you will support them all. I know that we pulled 295. We will readdress that on Tuesday, the funding for that. And thank you, Treasurer Swan, for your thoughtful guidance in that one. And I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett with Criminal Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you today are three resolutions, 261, 262, and 263. Criminal justice probation, ratifying actions and executing a grant application to the Criminal Justice Services to support pre-trial release program. 262 is also from probation, not from public defender. Authorizing an agreement with Buddy US for electronic monitoring for juveniles, amount of $3,000. And 263 from public defender, authorizing agreements with various transcribers for legal transcripts for their office. And there are two items from public defender that we had passed on to personnel, including the resolution 281. So that's all I have for criminal justice. I was asked to bring forth a resolution. I don't know when or where that should happen.
Supervisor Leggett, we can certainly talk about the during resolutions. It's also my understanding, and certainly we can discuss this at that time, is that it may be an appropriate topic for economic on Tuesday for discussion out of that committee as well.
Okay. I will go with your guidance on that.
Is that your understanding as well, County Administrator?
That's my understanding. What Supervisor Leggett's referring to is the resolution that was passed out to you by Sarah. That's a draft that was written by EDC. This is in reference to a resolution that we may ask to bring to the board next month regarding an application for broadband funding. It was a very, very, very late breaking item that came to us literally last night after dinner time. And if we apply for the funding, the local match is $250,000. We don't yet have a source for that identified. So the question from the Chair of Economic Growth was whether to bring this as a resolution today or whether to run it through committee if the process would allow for that. But we do think the process will allow for it. We'll more fully discuss this at committee would be my take, rather than ask the board today to make a leap of faith on something when we don't know where the $250,000 is coming from. But that's only my take on it. If you're comfortable going the opposite way, then we could do that too.
And the time frame will work, the August 17th.
I think so, because I don't think that the resolution is a requirement in the application packet. I think what we're doing is following our typical process here, where we get a resolution permitting the application to be filed. So if this is an application that the board is comfortable with after we discuss it in committee, I would suggest that we have a resolution ratifying the application. The due date is the 17th of August, which is a couple of days before the board meeting.
Supervisor Leggett, does that address the question that you had regarding that possible resolution?
It does. I would look over. I had asked, I think Ziplon from EDC to be on if there were any questions for him on that.
Okay.
Would there be?
What I'd like to do is Supervisor Bramer had a question and Supervisor Garrity, and then certainly ask our Director Siplon to weigh in with the EDC if appropriate. Supervisor Bramer.
I guess I can hold off until Mr. Siplon speaks to this. I think just like the affordable housing needs assessment, this is something that we should jump on. And if we need to move forward today, the only resolved is that we support and approve the grant application for broadband expansion. I think that's a perfectly acceptable thing to move forward with today. And then we can run through the committee the actual application itself.
Okay, well, I'd like to give this a little bit of latitude to just answer these few questions, and if the board desires them, we'll move on and ask for a waiving of the rules at the appropriate time during resolutions. Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah, the only comment I'll make is since 2016, we have heard all about broadband, all about every area is going to be covered with broadband. And now we're in 2021, if I recollect correctly today. And, you know, they want to apply for another grant, which I'm happy about. I would love to see it. But I'd like to know what it's going to do. I'd like to know if it's really going to do something, or if it's a feel-good grant that they're going to award this money. But I want to know if it's actually going to do anything, because, as again, since 2016, I sat up there in Lake Placid, and I'll go back in 2017 and hear the same thing over and over. Everybody in New York State would have broadband. Everybody in New York State does not have broadband. It was evident this past winter when the kids had to learn remotely. And now we seem to be rushing to go after $10 to $15 million. But I want to know what it's really going to do. I want to know where the money is really, is it really going to cover the areas that need broadband? And that's my only information I'd like to see. I can support it, but I want to know what the end result's really going to be once and for all. Is it really going to do what they've been telling us for 5 years?
Thank you. County Administrator Moore.
Yeah, I could speak to the time crunch here. So, and I don't want to steal too much of Jim Siplon's thunder. He's here. Jim has been coordinating the broadband assessment that we've been doing in this county since, I believe, December or January. Maybe we kicked it off in January. I don't quite recall. But the data on that project is still coming in. We have a lot of really good data, and the data from that project would be used in this in terms of what the funding is going to be used for. It would be used in order to connect unserved homes that we identify in Warren County. And there's a difference between unserved and underserved. So the best we have right now with the data indicates we have about 500 houses, primarily in the Lake Luzerne area, that are unserved, and we could use this particular grant to hook them up to service. The concern for me, and again, if the board doesn't share this concern and wants to move forward, that's your prerogative. I didn't feel right about putting this in front of you today and committing to a $250,000 match without knowing where that match is coming from. There had been the hope that we could use the ARPA funds, the federal recovery funds, for the match, but you can't use those funds in order to match a federal grant. So we'll need to, if we're assuming we go forward with this, and I think it's probably a good thing for us to do, we need to make sure we know where that match is coming from and that you're all comfortable with that.
Thank you. Mr. Siplon, are you on?
I am.
Good morning. Is there anything you wanted to add to this discussion at this point in time? If it's the will of the board, we'll be discussing this in much more detail here in a little bit.
Well, I'm happy to talk about it in quick order today and as much detail as you'd like one-on-one, and in addition on Tuesday. As Ryan just indicated, the speed at which this is happening is not at our control. The NTIA grant, which was the first of federal grants that will be attempt to address the remaining broadband gap, was only released several weeks ago. I think you should be proud as a county that the work that Ryan and others have done has put us on the map nationally in terms of our ability to respond. The vast majority of our residents in Warren County do have access to broadband. However, there are still hundreds of addresses and homes that do not. The rationale for that, it will take some time to go through, but primarily these are areas that were determined to be served by HughesNet satellite service, which we have quickly come to understand does not meet broadband standards of today. So our goal was to quickly capture those homes that, while under the state definition of what might have been acceptable a number of years ago, do not meet the criteria of even rudimentary broadband today. There are roughly 600 of those homes that we've identified in Warren County. And this effort was designed to try to reach as many of those as possible. We have meetings literally every day with other counties, with carriers, and with all the partners where we're attempting to approach this grant regionally with our neighboring counties to be able to aggregate our mass so we will compete better for these federal dollars. So Essex County, Washington County, Hamilton County, Clinton County, Franklin County have all agreed to join this grant effort. It's a fairly sophisticated process to try to get done in literally only 2 to 3 weeks. I do apologize about the nature of having to come to you while we're developing the grant application for your support. But as Ryan said, the only thing that is required to meet the grant application is a letter of endorsement from the county. The match itself is not even required. However, I don't think we'll win if we do not put matching dollars. Every county in America is likely organizing to participate in this in some way. However, in New York, many counties have opted out for whatever reason. I do think we stand a very good chance of being able to get additional funds, several $millions for Warren County, to address those addresses which have been left behind in the digital divide. It will not complete our work. Even if we are successful at this, there will still remain homes, businesses, and future needs around broadband that will need to be addressed in Warren County and regionally. However, I do believe it's a step in the right direction. And I think the cooperation that we've been able to demonstrate with our neighbors is also a laudable approach that's going to produce good benefits. That's what I have for you today.
Thank you, Jim. I just have one follow-up question. So it's a letter of endorsement that you're looking for to apply for the grant, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That helps me clarify what's before us today. Supervisor Shepler?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I do have a question. The addresses, are they all in Luzerne? Because goodness knows the town of Thurman is in dire need of broadband for our residents. We do have SLIC, but it doesn't cover the entire area.
Yeah.
So I would like to have Thurman included in this.
Sure.
They are, Supervisor. I apologize for not clarifying that. Of the roughly 500 that we are going to address, and by the way, our office has been in attempts to outreach to every single one of you to ensure that we communicate to you what we already know to be the unserved components of your areas, and to also solicit from you anything that we're not aware of. But Lake Luzerne represents the largest percentage of those. It's not the only percentage. There's an area in Thurman that is addressed. There's an area in North Creek that is addressed. There's an area in Horicon that's addressed. And there's an area that borders on Hague that is addressed. All of these are somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to no more than 50 addresses or homes. But the largest component is more than 200 in the Lake Luzerne area.
Mr. Siplon, if I just may, and I see you, Supervisor Garrity, and I'll come right back to you. I think what this highlights is the need for our committee members and our members of this board to have more information. Typically, and I applaud everyone's effort at 9:30 last night to be discussing this topic. However, since a letter of an endorsement is really what is needed and not a required resolution, I think what might be more appropriate is to have this discussed in detail at your economic meeting, which is where EDC and economic reports over to. And you've got a lot of work ahead of you between now and then to reach out to those communities and members of the board to let us know what your survey has in fact discovered, and to educate our community. If that would be acceptable versus having a resolution out of committee today. But I do see Supervisor Garrity and Supervisor Wild, and I don't see any other hands at this moment, but Supervisor Garrity?
Yeah, my only question is, can you provide us with a list in my community? Because several times I have given different areas that need broadband and I didn't hear us mention. So I would like to see the complete list of the underserved community properties in each community. And hopefully we've made the cut because we have areas of our community that do not have, are underserved and do not have broadband.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed we will. And in fact, I think John Wheatley from my office has already begun that outreach to you, Kevin.
Yesterday. yeah.
Director Siplon, if you could please make sure that we can go through our clerk of the board and she can, I think this is a decision by the entire board that they'll want to see that complete list. Supervisor Shepler, does that address your concern with that?
I think we should all be included in that list. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Wild, were you next?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For my peers on the board, one of the things that Mr. Siplon mentioned is something that's, I think, very important. We're competing for national grants. And what we have, based on the efforts that we've put forward so far, is a data set that not many, if any, other counties have. So we have basically positioned ourselves to demonstrate to the whoever this grant comes from that we're prepared to actually take this money and take action. I think that it's important for us to recognize that we have a real opportunity here and to not squander the opportunity because of the data set and the effort that we put in so far. So I'm not sure if there's going to be an issue with timing if we delay. I hope not. But based on the work we've done so far, again, I implore the board to consider moving forward as quickly as possible to approve this grant. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Your point is well taken, Supervisor Wild. It is not out of our usual practice to talk about grant applications and letters of support in committee. If the committee so desires, they'll make a request to have it ratified at the board or the chair to send a letter of support on behalf of the committee if it comes out of committee that way. But if there is a different feeling on this at the time of resolutions, I would encourage any supervisor at that point in time, you'll need to ask for a waiving of the rules and then move it forward. If referring it over to economic growth on Tuesday, it is going to be on that agenda, I'm sure regardless, according to Supervisor Hogan, and I appreciate her tenacity with that. Last comment on this, and we're going back to committee reports.
Just a question.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you. So I'm clear. The application is due 2 days before our next board meeting. How does all that work as far as approving it?
It can certainly go to committee on Tuesday, and we can, provided the board is comfortable with it, this would be an excellent opportunity to also use our catch-all committee, where all the chairs of every committee are represented, and you can certainly pass a resolution to then be ratified by the full board after that grant application as well.
Great, thank you.
If that's the desire of the committees.
Just want to be sure about that. Thank you.
We'll be late.
Excuse me, Supervisor Wild, you can ask the question directly through the chair of the board.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. With that process, we're going to be 2 days late. then?
Our county administrator will be happy to explain that process.
Thank you.
It would be my hope that we can talk this through fairly shortly and get everybody comfortable, get everybody informed, get everybody on the same page so that we have some confidence that the board supports the action. We'll do the action in time for the application, and then we'd ratify the action at the board meeting. That would be my hope here.
Thank you. And again, it's a perfect example. We've worked with our department heads, of course, so that they're aware any grant application does need committee approval. And Mr. Siplon, I think it's just simply that this request is coming not necessarily from a department head, but through an entity that reports to one of our committees. At this point in time, again, feel free to bring it back up under resolutions, but I would like to finish our committee reports. And I left off, I believe, with Supervisor Smith with Extension Services. Oh, I apologize, Supervisor Smith. I jumped right over facilities, Supervisor McGowan, and I try to go in alpha order to be fair. I'm almost to you, Supervisor McGowan.
Or gentlemen, but thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. County facilities met July 20th. We had two things on the our resolutions is 259 and 260. I have a committee that was put together for the agreement with Nexamp, and our commissioner of DPW, Kevin Hajos, is here, and I would love to have him come up and explain in more detail of this resolution on the reduced rate, so I don't mess it all up with my tongue twisting. So Kevin, could you join us up at the podium there and
Without objection.
without objection, sorry.
Superintendent Hajos.
Without objection, explain in a better detail than I could.
Thank you Supervisor McGowan. Kevin.
So 259 is amending the agreement with Nextamp Solar for the Floyd Bennett Memorial Airport for a solar land lease on airport. As you all know, back in December, we received proposals, not bids, but proposals from, I believe it was 8 different entities looking to put solar on our airport. Of the 8 proposals that we received, I believe only 1, possibly 2 were disqualified because they did not submit all the proper documentation. And Supervisor McGowan put a negotiating team together, and the negotiating team basically chose the top 3 proposers. Nextamp was the only company that bid on, put a proposal in on both parcels. We had parcel 1 and parcel 2 on the airport, the north parcel and the south parcel. They were the only company that put in for both parcels. Their initial rates were somewhere in the vicinity of approximately $206,000 per year, give or take. I think based on the table that was provided by Nextamp, I think that would have given us about $6 million in change over the 25-year period. Negotiating team met with the proposers, I believe, and the individuals on that team can correct me if I'm wrong, twice. We asked each one of those proposers, the top 3, a lot of questions. And it came out of that negotiating team that we decided to go with Nextamp. Nextamp, and as well as the other 2 proposers during the negotiating, had told all of us during that negotiating timeframe that they were all going to look to get some grant incentives through what NYSERDA refers to as their Block 17, but they were up against a time limit. They expected within probably about a 6-month period that block grant would close, which this was back in, say, February timeframe. So they expected probably the end of July, August for that block grant to close. It closed May 10th. So the incentives that they had initially offered us or the incentives that they were going to receive, and that prompted them, the initial offer to us with the $206,000 per year, did not come to fruition. They did give us a base pay rate during that negotiating time. The other supervisors that were part of that negotiating team knew that at the time. And now they're coming back with their base rate. But during our committee meeting, we had asked them to, because they're not sure where the incentives are. NYSERDA hasn't made a decision on where the incentives are going to go to moving forward. So they have come back with us with kind of a sliding scale. I think if you look in your packet and look at the resolution, the table that's attached to that, the initial line or the top line in that table is the base rate. The next line down is about a 3% increase in incentive if that's what they receive. And that puts us probably about $700 per acre short of where they were in their initial proposal. The next line down puts us about where their initial proposal was. And then the bottom line is that if they receive, I think, up to a 9-cent incentive, that puts us a little bit over what the initial proposal was. Now, I believe Dallas Mason from Nextamp is on the Zoom call today. I don't see her up there, but I know I gave her the link. So that's the bottom line. So one of the things that we did to pick those top 3 was we had kind of criteria as part of the proposal. It was 80%, I think, was the funding that they were going to provide the county. And then the other 2 was a 10% for environmental and 10% for kind of their qualifications. So the bottom line is all of them met the environmental concerns that we had and the qualifications. Really, it came down to kind of the money that was being offered. Now, again, with that being said, Nextamp was the only one that submitted for both parcels. One of the companies that we interviewed actually combined with another company to do one of the parcels. And again, Nextamp was at that time was the highest number, and they still, even with the base rate that they are, the highest, I believe, the highest proposal that we have.
Thank you. I know there may be questions about this, and I would just ask, because this was in your packet, that we have those during the time of discussion on resolutions.
All right, thank you. And so in that case, so thank you, Kevin, for that in-depth explanation. that resolution. So as Chairwoman had stated, we'll open that more up during discussions. The other resolution I have is 260, which is really just authorizing an agreement with CNL Mechanical, which is basically to have them on an on-call basis if we need them here at the county. More or less housekeeping, so it went out for a bid and they were awarded the bid. So I hope that I can get support for both those resolutions. I did attend the NACO conference, and I have to say I was completely overwhelmed, and I'm still sorting out all the info and everything that I've gotten, and I have been able to add some of the knowledge that I gained there in the few couple committee meetings that I've had since we've been home. But it sure was, to me, it was a very worthwhile trip. Being away from home for so long there, it's a little difficult sometimes, but what I feel that I've gained would really benefit the county. So I thank you all for allowing me to attend. So, but that's all I have for my report, and I thank you very much, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the committee because every Monday that there's a meeting, I have had other meetings to attend to. So Ben has been the co-chair and he's been able to take over. He's going to give the committee report. As a matter of fact, the next meeting coming up, I also have meetings in my town that I have to take care of first. So I'm not sure if we want to switch our positions just due to that fact. It's been frustrating for me because I don't like to do something without doing it top shelf. But anyway, thank you, Ben, again, and then we'll give the committee report.
And if I may just address that, thank you for your honesty, your efforts, and your willingness to continue to serve on that committee. If both of you don't object, I'm happy to make that switch. I'm not sure, Supervisor Driscoll, your schedule allow you to chair that committee?
That's fine, as long as Supervisor Smith still remains on the committee.
I'll remain on the
Good,
committee.
good,
Hopefully I
thanks.
can get there one of these Monday evenings. I also
Thank
would
you.
like, if I could, I would like to mention another committee that I'm on that I didn't know I was on, the septic committee.
Yes, Supervisor Smith, I'm happy to speak to you about that after. It is an appointment by the chair of the board, and we're so excited to have you a part of it, but we can talk.
I found out in the newspaper that I was on that committee.
Right,
So
yeah.
Just so you know, that's why I wasn't there. So.
We did send out a list, and you added so much to the discussion. We really appreciated your input, and again, happy to have that discussion after the meeting during the committee
I just
report.
wanted everybody to know. that
Sure.
I didn't make that meeting because I wasn't on the original list. and
Supervisor Bramer walked away, but we'll make sure that you get all those notices well ahead of time. So it was short for the meeting setting. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you. Cornell Cooperative Extension. I've also conferred with my colleague Supervisor Bruno, and I'm on the phone with Supervisor Smith on a regular basis on this and other type of stuff. The Warren County Youth Fair is scheduled for Saturday, August 7th. The annual golf tournament is scheduled for Saturday, August 28th at Cronin in Warrensburg. We talked a lot about Cooperative Extension's annual work plan. They had a state representative from Cornell Cooperative Extension on Zoom, and they're doing great work up there. We all know that here locally, but the state recognizes also the efforts of Dr. Seeley and his amazing staff. They've been throughout the pandemic, they've been doing regular trainings, workshops online, and eventually they will return to face-to-face types of programs, but they haven't really missed a beat throughout the COVID time, and I'd like to thank them for that. In addition to Dr. Seeley's responsibilities in Warren County, for over the past year, for those of you who aren't aware, he's also been acting director of the Essex Franklin County Cornell Cooperative Extension. They've advertised that position a number of times. They've had candidates, and at the 11th hour, a couple of candidates have pulled out of that. So if you know people from Essex or Franklin counties who have those types of skills and aptitudes, I would encourage them to contact Dr. Seeley. We talked a lot about the training center, which is up and running. It still needs some appliances and some other items to be in compliance. I believe, as I understand from Supervisor Bruno, that Cooperative Extension will be coming before the Facilities Committee this coming week to talk about some housekeeping things and getting permission to use the training facility for upcoming events and activities. And that completes my report. Thank you. Supervisor Bruno, thank you.
You're welcome. I just wanted to clarify for those of you that don't know, the reason Ben talked to me, I'm a member of the board of directors of the Cornell Cooperative. So if you didn't understand that, I'm also the head of the committee for facilities and insurance. So I've been heavily involved with the training center, which hopefully at some point we'll have more else. We'll all be invited. I think it's a great asset, not only for Cornell Cooperative Extension, but for the county, the region as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Driscoll and Supervisor Bruno. Supervisor Thomas, budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Budget Committee did meet. We met on June 29th, I believe. There was discussion about the fund balance in an acceptable level. There was really no decisions made about anything. It's just we kind of covered a lot of different areas. I would like again to give credit to the past budget officer and the administrator for I believe that is the reason that we have such a healthy fund balance. The actions that were taken last year allowed that to transpire. We also talked about reserves and maybe going forward with continue to funding or add more funds to the reserve funds. There was reports in the packet from most of the people that we contract with and that the county contributes to their activities with dollars. There was a budget timeline that was passed out, and basically we'll have to meet again here shortly and decide, get some more input on where we should go with that. So that was really about it.
Thank you, Budget Officer Thomas. That was an informative meeting. I will also take this opportunity before we move on to our county administrator's report, just again to remind everyone, please make sure your emails are on file correctly with our Warren County Supervisors group. An email was sent on Friday, July 2nd to all of our supervisors appointing the members of the septic committee. A follow-up notice was sent on July 15th by Sarah about the meeting, and I believe it did just appear in the paper. So Supervisor Smith, we'll make sure your email is correct in that, because I'm afraid perhaps you didn't get that email on the 2nd. But at any rate, just let's make sure we've got everyone's contact info because we love to communicate. County Administrator Moore, your report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As everyone knows, between June 5th and the July 4th holiday, I used up some accumulated vacation time for paternity leave. And I was pretty good about only monitoring emails for an hour or two a day, just to make sure I didn't have a bunch of stuff that was, that I couldn't possibly catch up on when I got back. And it was really only an hour or two a day. And And it was a great break for me and a great opportunity. The reason I was able to do that is because so many staff and supervisors stepped up to fill in for me while I was gone and keep the trains running here, so to speak. So I want to thank everybody for that. All of the staff, all of the supervisors who made it easy for me to take that time off, as well as the board for supporting it in concept anyway. The way I looked at it, I only had one opportunity in my life to get those 4 weeks right. And because of the gift of the time that you gave to me, I have no regrets about that. And it'll be one of the best times of my life that I'll always look back on. So thank you very much for the ability to take that time off. Since I've been back, the highlights in my activities, in addition to catch up, included, as Supervisor Bramer alluded to, we are negotiating with the remaining unions that are not in contract right now. We got into a contract already, as you well know, with CSEA, and we were already in contracts with the two police and correction supervisory units. The three that are out of contract are the PBA, the corrections officer unit, and the Alliance, which is the primarily non-uniformed sheriff's department employees. We had negotiations with the Alliance on Wednesday, July 7th, and we had negotiations with the PBA on Tuesday, July 13th. And as Supervisor Bramer said, I think both of those sessions went really, really well. And I'm optimistic that we get to collective bargaining agreements with those two units in relatively short order. So then if we're able to do that, we'll only have one outstanding unit that is not in a contract of the correction officers, and their contract expired at the end of last year. So we're not too far out of contract as it is, and we'll get into that one as well. On Thursday, July 8th, I participated in county attorney interviews. We have several excellent candidates for that position, and we will go into a second round of interviews. I'd encourage as many supervisors as can attend those interviews to attend those interviews. It's a position that works for the entire board, and we would love your input in that decision. I think you'll be very pleased with all three of the candidates that we'll have at the second round of interviews. On Wednesday, July 14th, we started our 2022 budget review, if you can believe it. We had our first department, which is the self-insurance department. They have to go about a month earlier than everybody else because their budget determines items that are in each of the county department budgets as well as your town budgets. So, and the other members of our self-insurance program. So that process is underway, and we officially kick it all off next week on the 21st with our department head meeting, where the budget officer will give the budget instructions. So we're looking forward to budget as we always do. It's a lot of hard work, but it's also enjoyable and gratifying to see what our departments come to us with every year, their new ideas on how to deliver quality services for a good price. And we thank them all for that. Believe that, I did want to mention, in addition to broadband grants last night, I do also read the NISAC magazine. And thanks to Don Lehman, Warren County is featured yet again in the NISAC magazine. It's a great story about, the title is Warren County Group Organizes to Save Summer. And it's a really good account of the private sector coming together with government last year to handle COVID and treat COVID with the seriousness it deserved as a public health crisis, but also as an economic opportunity. And I think that effort succeeded with flying colors. We thank everybody who was involved in it and who continues to drive that partnership forward to this day. I'll scan this article and send it around to the group later, but thanks to Don and thanks to NISAC for highlighting our efforts, and thanks to our partners for making it a successful summer. And we are already well into another successful summer this year. It's very nice to see all the people that are up here visiting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Administrator Moore. Acting County Attorney Robert Twilliger for the County Attorney's Report.
Good morning. Since the last board meeting, I've attended the next round of committee meetings on it that we've had. I also just yesterday attended the Local Development Corporation board meeting and the two special committee meetings after that, the one on the ethics and the one on the septic transfer on inspection law. I was really excited to attend those two committees because they got a lot done and turned out to be very productive. We have several assisted outpatient treatment cases coming along now here that the county attorney's office does. That's one where we seek a court order to get people who have mental health problems getting mental health treatment. The court order would require them to get medication, maybe attend counseling or therapy. It provides a little bit of law enforcement teeth to get someone some mental health and extra help that they might need. It's a good alternative for people who could function in the community with, again, a little extra help like this, but who don't need to be institutionalized. We also looked at our juvenile delinquency cases, and we actually have, for the first 6 months of the year, we have almost as many cases, juvenile delinquency cases, as we had in all of 2019 and 20 combined. So there's been a huge spike in those for the first half of the year. I also have been working with the outside counsel, liaisoning with them on matters where they're representing the county on different cases. The big one financially is the opioid case. There's actually 2 of those going on. The one involves Purdue Pharmaceutical and members of the Sackler family, who are substantial owners of Purdue Pharmaceutical. That's in a Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the Southern District in New York. That case is close to a settlement, nothing signed, sealed, and delivered yet, so it could still fall apart. But the idea is that there is going to be a settlement there. The numbers are kind of looking in the hundreds of millions, 200 to 500 million range. Purdue would be throwing in money. The Sackler family would be putting in money to be used for drug treatment and prevention. Purdue Pharmaceutical would also be restructured so that some of its revenue would be diverted every year to drug treatment and prevention programs. But again, nothing definitive on it to say, oh yeah, here's a definite settlement and resolution and where it's going to be going. There's also the larger case against several other pharmaceutical companies that's taking place at an auditorium in Toro Law School. They needed the bigger room because there's so many people involved. That one too, they're talking about settlements. The numbers bantered around are somewhere around 500 million with a cap on attorney's fees of about a 10% cap of the award on the attorney's fees. So the law firms representing everybody hopefully won't be siphoning off all the money on it. Again, nothing definite for sure. So I can't say, yeah, here's what it is. I'm not going to count the eggs before they hatch. We don't know what the actual amount is going to be and whether it will really be a settlement on that one. I'll let you know as it develops. That trial is still going on. It started earlier in July. I think July 6th it started, and it's going to continue through the rest of the month, if not even into August. I don't know exactly when that's going to end, and it likely will settle before then. At least that's what it seems like the judge wants to try to make them do, is settle it before the end of the trial on it. We don't know. It's still all in flux. I'll definitely let the board know what happens that way if we do get any resolution, any kind of settlement. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for a moment to go back to County Administrator Moore.
My apologies. I always announce the employee anniversaries. I skipped right over it. With 25 years in the Office for the Aging, Bernice Cummings, and with 20 years in the Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Pete DeFiore. Congratulations to both of those individuals.
Thank you. At this point in time, reading of communications.
We have the Warren County Jury Board 2020 Annual Report, Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. Financial Reports dated March 31, 2021 and April 30, 2021. Warren County Jury Board's July 7, 2021 meeting minutes. A notice of public hearing on proposed project CHPE LLC project from the Warren Washington County IDA. Email from June Maxim of the North Country Gazette regarding vacancies in office. Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp.'s May 2021 surcharge payment in the amount of $3,725 and 2020 regional benefit distribution installments number 15, 16, and 17, each in the amount of $1,631. We have several resolutions from the Washington County Board of Supervisors. They are 101 of 21, approving the issuance of certain obligations of the counties of Warren and Washington CDC to finance certain not-for-profit project for the Glen at Highland Meadows. 122 of 21, setting time and place for public hearing concerning the 2021-2022 Adirondack Community College budget. 132 of 21, appointing members of the counties of Warren and Washington Industrial Development Agency and Civic Development Corporation. And 134 of 21, urging the New York State Governor to not sign New York State Bill S 7196/A06762B entitled an act to amend the general business law in relation to the dangers to safety and health and creation of public nuisance caused by the sale, manufacturing, distribution, importing, and marketing of firearms into law.
Thank you. Reading of resolutions.
Resolution numbers 257 through 296 were distributed to the board and posted to the Warren County website on Wednesday, July 7th, which met the distribution deadline specified in the rules of the board. Resolution numbers 259 and 295 were amended after mailing and were distributed to the board and posted to the Warren County website on July 15th. One of those was just pulled, 259. I believe, nope, 295 was pulled. So we need a motion to approve the amendment to 259.
Would you like that right now?
Yep.
I have a motion to amend. Made by Supervisor Leggett, seconded by Supervisor Bruno. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, you do have two floor resolutions that are also in your packet. Floor resolution number 1 is waiving the rules to address floor resolution number 2, which is introducing the local law for the ethics policy.
I'll make that.
Thank you. Supervisor Garrity makes a motion to waive the rules. Is that motion seconded by Supervisor Diamond? Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Wild.
thank you. I was at some of the meeting yesterday.
Supervisor Wild, a point of order. This is only to waive the rules. Is that what your discussion is
Well,
about?
I'm discussing about waiving the rules and the timing of this
Please keep your
situation.
comments limited to just the waiving of the rules.
I'm not sure how I separate that because waiving the rules is, on this instance, is basically a discussion about whether we should move forward with considering this motion.
Supervisor Wild, at the meeting in June, the board did approve and vote on a resolution that asked the board to form a special committee to report back with a resolution at this July meeting, which is why you see a waiving of the rules as a result of the board action last June.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do recall that. It's just a matter of timing. And I believe that we're moving too quickly, but I will save my discussions on the resolution if I must until that time comes.
Supervisor Wild, I will come to you directly if this passes and you may have your first comment.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other discussion on waiving of the rules? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
2 opposed. Supervisor Strauss, Supervisor Wild? Abstain? That motion carries. Thank you. At this point in time, may I have a motion to introduce proposal law number 6? It's before you. Supervisor Diamond on a motion and a second by Supervisor Leggett. Discussion. Supervisor Wild, as promised, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As I mentioned, I was at part of the meeting yesterday. My concerns are, and then they're multiple. I brought one up yesterday during the committee meeting that some of the public have expressed to me, what are we trying to hide? And in part, I agree with that. And one of the reasons is that it's like the fox guarding the chicken coop. If we had an ethics review board in place, my request would be that this would go to the ethics review board before it came to the full board to make sure that we're following all the pieces of the puzzle that we need to follow. We are elected officials. When we decided to run for office, we all knew what we're getting into. The public expects us to be open and honest about any potential conflicts of interest. The form that we had originally, from my understanding, was based on the New York State ethics or financial disclosure law. Why we changed this, I've heard before that it's none of somebody else's business in terms of what my financial situation is. We need to consider what the public thinks about this. We're moving too quickly. And if we do have this as a public hearing, I would propose that we change the form of that public hearing so that any comments from people that can't afford to take time off have the ability to have letters written into the record and their comments heard so that we can get a full insight of how the public feels. But I implore you that we should wait on this resolution until we have an ethics review board other than the foxes in this room that are trying to change what we are reporting on and have them decide whether or not this is appropriate or not. There's no reason to push this forward today. We could wait a month. We might even be able to wait 2 months because the next time I think before we filed financial disclosure forms are next year. So my request to this board is to seriously consider moving forward with an ethics review board review of this document, an independent review of this document before we make this decision. And I will not support this going forward unless we have that kind of review. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Wild, and out of respect for your comment earlier, I went right to you, but I did neglect Administrator Moore, who wanted to be heard on this matter. I will also state that our clerk of the board is happy to confirm for you that with public hearings, we do accept letters, anything in written correspondence, and that has always been our practice. And we did attempt to contact our previous ethics board, and County Attorney Terwilliger can certainly share with you the outcome of that. We did not maintain contact information for our Board of Ethics when we were unable to reach them as well, but we went through that process several months ago. But Administrator Moore, I apologize.
Sure. I spoke to the hypothetical question of what are we trying to hide? I spoke to at the end of yesterday's committee meeting. And so but first on the point of the public input, we will be taking public input because it's a public hearing. That's what we're doing. We're setting the public hearing for the August meeting. And I would encourage any member of the public to participate in that, to come in and let your views be known. In terms of what we currently have in that form, what we currently have in that form is not what is dictated by New York state law. There are many differences when you compare what's in New York state law to what's currently in our form. Our form was the result of we initially had a form in the 90s, and then we changed that form, I believe, in 2014 after a review by the board at that time that took the better part of the year. So what we have currently has never been exactly what's in the state law, and it doesn't have to be. The state law gives municipalities like ours that acted early enough on their own ethics codes. It gives municipalities that did that the ability to determine for themselves what should be in their ethics code and what should be in their financial disclosure. So that led us into the task going back several months of what that content ought to be. And we did our best, the county attorney's office, as well as I, to research the body of information that we could find on that. What I appreciated most was that primer that we sent around to board members from the New York State Bar Association. Fairly authoritative, fairly well researched. And that primer recommended when you're forming an annual disclosure form, they had 3 tenets in there that they recommended. Number one was that it should tie back to the ethics code. So the questions that you're asking on the form ought not to be extraneous for so the ethics code guides us all on the behavior that's expected of us by this government to avoid conflicts of interest. So the disclosure form ought to relate to what's in that ethics code. We shouldn't be asking, are you engaged in this thing that is not even part of the ethics code? So that's number one. And I could say that a lot more gracefully. Number two is zero-based drafting. They recommend that you start with a blank sheet of paper, that you look at your ethics code, and that you formulate your questions based on getting to the heart of what's in the ethics code. And their third recommendation was don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But there were 2 things that was a helpful part of the manual, but 2 parts of the manual that really stuck out to me that get to the heart of what we're doing is what is the purpose of a code of ethics? Page 227, I'll read to you from the manual. This is a New York State Bar Association. Since the vast majority of public officials are honest and want to do the right thing, a code of ethics should seek to guide and protect honest public officials. An ethics law does not, will not, and cannot catch crooks. That is not its purpose. It's to establish behaviors that this government believes are ethical behaviors, and to be able to instruct anyone that is subject to that ethics code behaviors to avoid. So that's number one. There's another piece of this manual that talks about the purpose of a financial disclosure form, and it's on page 182, and I'll read from the manual. The role of annual disclosure is to bring potential conflicts of interest into the public arena, not to catch crooks. So again, this exercise, as I see it, is let's make sure we have a code of ethics that we're all satisfied with. We passed, we amended the code of ethics a couple of months ago. And then when it comes to the disclosure form, let's ask meaningful questions that produce information that's relevant to that code of ethics.
Thank you, Administrator Moore. Supervisor Bruno, then Supervisor Garrity.
Thank you, Chairwoman. In response to Supervisor Wild's comment, one of his comments that, when we ran for office, we all knew what we were getting into. I ran for this position 3 times. Not once did I know that I would have to sign this financial disclosure piece, okay? That would not have deterred me from running, but I certainly would have questioned, as I have, some of the information on there. There's a short answer to the public, whoever they are, saying, what are you trying to hide? The short answer is nothing, okay? And I do not believe that it's anyone's business what my wife's finances are, my children's finances are, their employment, if it doesn't directly relate to the performance of my duties in a position as a Warren County supervisor. So I take issue with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah, I've just got a comment on this. When I had no problem with the old form, but I thought there was a lot of stuff in there that really wasn't useful or needed. I had problems with the short form presented to us, and that's why I couldn't go with the short form that was presented to us. I thought our chairperson did a very good job with this form answering the questions, but I've got to agree with Dan. When I finally showed my disclosure to my wife one time, she said, why do they need to know what I'm doing? I said, they don't, but it's the form. So I think the changes made were effective and efficient. People will have the right, if they want to disagree with our form, to speak up at the public hearing, and we can always revisit their comments and re-adjourn if we think it's right. But just to throw the baby out with the bathwater, we're trying to come to a compromise. And I thought we did a pretty good job coming up with a compromise. And during our committee meeting yesterday, we did make a few tweaks to it. But it's a compromise. And I'm happy with what they did. And I would like to hear what the public, if the public doesn't see it that way, I have nothing to hide. I've told people numerous occasions. They come in and they want to gotcha. It's not about gotcha. It's about doing what's right. And I have no problem. Now, and plus it relies on each one of us in this room to be ethical. It's really up to us to be ethical, to do what's right. So for us to have this hammer over us, you better put this down or do it. No, that's what we should be doing anyways. So I'm happy with the form. I think our chairperson and committee did the best they could. I'd like to see it go to a public hearing and give the public all opportunities to tear it down. But I can tell you right now, there was some things on the old one. NA didn't apply, not applicable to me, or I'm sure not applicable to a lot of us. So I think this form, we can deal with it and answer the questions. And there again, if the public does not think we've gone far enough, then they can tell us that. But I just, I think, you know, to be, have forms to tell you how to act sometimes, I think that's going a little bit too far. So that's my take on it. I thought did a good job. We're going to get there. And if we have people out in the public think that I'm hiding anything or any one of us in this room is hiding stuff, I feel bad for them because I'm not hiding anything. I can tell you, I go on the record. I'm not hiding anything. So, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'll also call everyone's attention to your packet. Page 11 of 18 has an Appendix A that lists all of the different positions that are required. You will see many more employees than supervisors that are also required to fill this out. Our clerk just mentioned that to me, and I wanted to make sure I called your attention to that. Supervisor Stroh, I had you listed next.
Yes, thank you. My issue is, well, I was in Albany and mid-afternoon, I returned to the town office to do town work and prepare for this meeting. And as I was late in the afternoon, I did receive the proposed changes in the ethics and disclosure law. I'm not sure how what was sent to me is different than what was approved. And what was sent to me may be completely acceptable. I simply don't know because I'm not aware of what changes were made between what we approved and what was sent to me last night. All right, I say this because when we set a public hearing, I like the product that we're putting before the public to be substantially in the format that we're comfortable with. And this may be a product I'm comfortable with. I just don't know because I don't know what's changed between what we approved and this. So, and I don't know what the rush is. So if you had given me this product, which you did last night, and given me a month to say, all right, here are the proposed changes from what the board approved previously, and we would like, if you're happy with this product, we're going to put this before the public. Okay, fine. That's the process by which I think that should go through. I don't know what the hurry is. Why all of a sudden we got to set a public hearing within the month between now and the public hearing? This may change substantially once I get a chance and once you get a chance to look at it and say, okay, well, this change was made, this change was made. I don't like this. Okay, I don't know. I simply don't know. But whatever product I put before the public at a public hearing, I want everybody in this board or most of the people in this board feeling comfortable with that product. Receiving this last night didn't give me the opportunity to do that. So that's why I don't want to go forward with this. I just sooner wait another month. I don't see what the hurry is.
So noted, Supervisor Stroh. I will say that in occupancy tax and tourism, Supervisor Garrity prefers to take the old version and compare it to the new version. In personnel, Supervisor Bramer likes a redlined version. All chairs of committees are that is your privilege to present that information in any way you see fit. When it does get sent out by the clerk, she sends it in the final format. She is now sending the red line version to the entire board. If Supervisor Diamond, as the chair of that committee, would like to provide that at the public hearing, that is Supervisor Diamond's position, and I will certainly defer at this point in time to Supervisor Diamond as the chair.
Thank you very much. I'd be more than happy to go over some of the modifications at this point in time to the existing adopted financial disclosure. I'll point out that everybody has a copy of the changes. Item 2 in the original financial disclosure asked to write down your spouse and children. Provide the names of your spouse if married, the names of your dependents or children, and their ages. I really don't understand what that question was intended to be. However, it was of my mindset that we want to ask a more direct question is, does any of your relatives currently work for Warren County? If so, please provide the names of the relatives, of the names of the county departments and the relatives title, date of hire. Simple. Rather than looking at a generic question, what does this, my spouse and my children's age, have to do with me sitting here as a board supervisor? I think what they're trying to get at is if you have relatives, and relatives are described in the ethics code that was adopted as children, family members. If you have that, I think this is more of a direct question. So that's why the modification was changed there.
Supervisor Diamond, I hate to interrupt you, and I would normally never do this. For those of you following along on your computers, our clerk has just made me aware of the fact that the red line version with your agenda was sent out previously to last night. So every member of the board had the red lined, and then it was sent out. It was sent out with the updates from your committee. So for those following along on their computers, that's where they can find it in their email and on the public website that was sent out a few days ago. So just please continue. For those of us following along.
The other item, the next item in the disclosure law was the financial interest. It was, they had categories from $0 to $5,000, $5,000, $10,000, and up to over $100,000. Really, I don't know what that relates to directly to the questions or whether we're being ethical or not. So that was stricken from the original form. Item A, under business position, list any offices, trusteeships, directorships, partnerships, or other positions in a business associated, proprietary, or for not-for-profit organizations held by you. And the original draft was your spouse and your dependents. That wording from your spouse and dependent children was modified or corrected to relative. That was the term that was used in the ethical code itself. If any, where these 4 businesses that are involved with the county or any municipalities within the Warren County structure. So there was language changes from your spouse and your dependent children to relative, because that's what in the code. And we took family member out and we included the name of the individual. Our next item down was the outside employment. Describe any outside occupation, employment, trade, business, or profession providing more than $1,000 per year for you, your spouse, your relative. Then again, we have dependent children. If any, and indicated whether such activities are regulated by the state or local agency. The outside employment is involved within the county or the municipality. So the language referencing dependent children was replaced and removed, and the outside employment agency with the county is included into that question. That's question B. And if you look to the right, because the financial categories A through F were removed, that category was also to remove because we were no longer using that financial category above. Future employment, there was no change to that. The next question was on past employment. Identify the sources and nature of any income in excess of $1,000 per year from any prior employer, including deferred income, contributions to pensions or retirement funds, profit sharing, severance pay, or payment under and buyout agreements. If we're going to have to list every previous job that we've worked on, historically, over time, there's not enough pages. There's just not enough pages to list that. So why that question is relevant, I don't understand the question, so we removed it. Investments. Itemize and describe all investments in excess of $5,000 or 5% of the value in any business, corporation, partnership, or assets, including stocks, bonds, loans, pledges, collateral, and other investments for you or your spouse and dependents. Again, not changing the $5,000. We're not changing the 5%. We're changing the language from spouse and children to relatives. That's what's called out in the code, and that's what's defined in the code as relatives. Category, because of the financial categories that were stricken earlier on in the disclosure law, was also removed, and it reads another, rather than a family member's name, the name, business address of business, the real estate, and the description of the investments, period. The next item was F. Trust. Identify each interest in a trust or estate or similar beneficial interest in any assets in excess of $2,000, except for IRS eligible retirement plans or interest in the estate or trust of the relative, you and your spouse and dependent children. That was eliminated. I don't know why that question is asked. I don't know why that pertains to my actions here as a county supervisor. So we took that out. Go to item F. Other income. Identify the source and nature of any other income in excess of $1,000 from any source not described above, including teaching income, lecturing fees, consulting fees, contractual income, or any other income of any nature. What does teaching income, lecture fees, consulting fees, contractual income, or any other income of any nature have anything to do with my position as a supervisor? Also, there was language that was deleted, taken out of there. Again, spouse and dependent children, and it was replaced by relative, similar to the code. The category of amount, we took it out because it didn't apply, because we didn't have the financial categories to include at the earlier part of this disclosure statement. Again, the title is member, and the categories are name and address. If this applies, income source and nature of the income. Next item down, interest in contracts. Describe any interest of you or your relative, describe any interest you or your spouse or your dependent children in any contract involving the county or the municipality within Warren County. The language, the words spouse and dependent children were removed and relative was inserted. That's what the code called for. Category amount was eliminated because we eliminated the structure of the financial categories early on. And at the bottom, it says family member or name. We included name, the contract, and the contract description, period. So we really didn't do a lot of modifications. It was wordsmithing and looking at what applied, in my opinion, to us as supervisors. Next one was in the original document, political parties. List any positions you held within the last 5 years as an officer of any political party, political committee, or political organization. The term political organization includes any independent body or any organization that is affiliated with a subsidiary of a political party. What does that have to do with our roles as supervisors of Warren County? Political affiliation. We all know who's affiliated to what political party, but what does that have to do with what we're trying to achieve here today is do the people's work. Next item, debts. Describe all debts, you and your relative. We inserted relative, remove spouse and dependent children again, because that's in the original code. Owe to the county or municipality within Warren County in excess of $5,000, including outstanding occupancy tax payments or tax liens as of the date of filing of the statement, other than the liabilities to a relative. What was removed was, and that was shortened to that statement, do not list liabilities incurred by or guaranteed by a reporting individual or such individual spouse or by any reporting partnership, corporation in which reporting individuals or such individual spouses have The reporting individuals or such individual spouses do not list any obligations to pay maintenance in connection with the maternal actions, alimony, or child support. Revolving charges account, revolving charging account information shall be set forth if such liability is in excess of $5,000 at the time of the filing. Do not list any loans by a financial institute to finance education costs, the cost of home purchases or improvements for primary or secondary residence, or purchase of personally owned motor vehicles and household or appliances. I don't understand the question, for one, and I think what we did was we took the look at the question and looked at it and said, how does this apply to us? So we modified it, which you have a copy of it with you to read, describe all debts that you or your relative owe to the county or any municipality within Warren County in excess of $5,000, period. Again, the category amount, because we eliminated earlier on, was stricken. Third-party reimbursements, identify and describe the source of any third-party reimbursements for travel-related expenditures in excess of $250 was stricken, correct? I believe. Okay.
That's correct, Supervisor, to comply with the $75 state law.
So we stricken the 250 to comply with the $75 of state law, which is required. The term reimbursements includes any travel-related expenses provided by anyone other than the county for speaking engagements, conferences, or fact-finding events that relate to your official duties. Again, state law is $75. We modified that from $250 to $75. The category, the financial category, again, was removed. So getting on to item 7, which is gifts and honorariums. Has anyone attempted to, rather than the original question was list the source of all gifts, aggregates in excess of $250 received during the last year by you or your relative, you or your spouse or dependent child, including gifts from a relative. The terms gifts include gifts of cash, property, personal items, payment to third parties on your behalf, forgiveness of debt, and any other payments that are not reportable as income. We changed the gifts from $250 to $75. And we also eliminated at that point in time language that lists the source of all gifts. This lists the source of all. The language that includes, again, your spouse and dependents, and we replaced that with relatives. And we also removed value of the gift, which is unknown at this point, and the category, the financial category. Next item was the requirements of law relating to the reporting of a financial interest are in the public's interest, and no adverse interferences or unethical or illegal conduct or behavior will be drawn merely from compliance within these requirements. I believe that's the signing statement in the financial disclosure. And then we had added, talking with county work, the temporary county attorney, we added some language at the end that filers shall provide the Board of Ethics with additional information if requested to do so by the Board of Ethics. So that's an obligation that wasn't in there that we added. The reporting requirements of this statement is required by New York State law and the law of Warren County. Improper use of any of the information contained in this statement by any third person or entity in violation of the privacy or other rights, or to harass, annoy the filer of the statement is separately punishable under the law. FOIL request for information contained in this document will not be denied if the information will be used to harass or annoy the filer. I would say that that was included to have an honor system, that we take everybody's application, FOIL application at hand, and we wanted to try to discourage anyone, and we're not accusing anybody directly of this, of using the information in a manner that could be hurt or painful to family members in regards to my performance or anybody's performance on the county board. That basically is it. It's been a lot of time, a lot of work put into it. I think it's a pretty good disclosure. I think it's a compromise. And I think that it does meet Warren County's needs. Why the hurry? We were appointed, this committee was appointed to work on this issue for 1 month. That expires at the end of this calendar year, at the end of this month, excuse me. But we're also taking this into consideration as a draft document. We wanted to hear what the public's comments are. I wanted to hear those that have just got this, that have never seen the original foreclosure statement or the red line statements that were sent out. Give those supervisors a chance to ask additional questions, and that can be concurred at the public hearing.
Thank you, Supervisor Diamond. I will certainly call on supervisors that have not been heard yet before we go to any other discussion. Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, picking up on what Supervisor Wild said, and this may go to the county administrator in part, because I know he has spoken to a much more active ethics board and review. It is the thinking that the ethics board on its own could make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for changes or updates or expansions of the ethics procedures and policies. And if the answer to that is yes, then I think that whatever we do today or what might exist 3 years from today, we won't know, because the ethics board itself might say to the Board of Supervisors, well, I need the following, we need the following information is not presently being provided. You need to amend whatever it is we need to amend. And so if the answer to that is yes, that the ethics board on its own could make recommendations to the full Board of Supervisors, then I think that item C in the ethics policy might need some wordsmithing, because as I read section C, it leads me with the impression that it says, in addition, the Board of Ethics may make recommendations with respect to the drafting and adoption of a code of ethics or amendments to the code of ethics upon the request of the Board of Supervisors. So if we really want the Board of Ethics to be active in this process, then it would seem to me that that would be wordsmith to read as it presently reads. Anything we would refer to them, but also it would be wordsmith to say that, or any recommendations that the Board of Ethics might make to the board, so that, I mean, I'll take a stab at it. In addition, the Board of Ethics may make recommendations with respect to the existing Code of Ethics law, comma, drafting and adoption of a Code of Ethics, comma, or amendments to the Code of Ethics upon the, and just strike the, or you put the word or upon the request of the Board of Supervisors. So I don't know if you're following me in all this.
Which section was that?
I think it's item C would be the insert to try to address.
Oh, into the disclosure form?
Yeah, into the narration, into the Board of Ethics itself. I'm trying to find whether that's recited specifically anywhere else in the code.
It is.
And it's under section 20, Board of Ethics.
Right.
And so I don't know, do we need, I guess my question to you is do we need to make, if that's a good thing to have, that the Board of Ethics itself could make recommendations to the board, then do we need to explicitly state that here?
Yeah, and my answer would be yes, that is the intention, that the Board of Ethics, when it's appointed, I think August, I believe it sticks out in my mind, is when we're shooting to have the members of the Board of Ethics appointed. One of the changes that was made in the ethics code itself in section 20E This ethics and disclosure policy shall be reviewed and updated as needed with the new term of each board at a minimum of every 2 years. So what that, and the intent of that is to have the ethics, that's part of, we want the ethics board to be more active. So when that ethics board is appointed, we would want them to review the ethics code as well as the annual financial disclosure, recommend changes to that at a minimum of every 2 years.
Okay, so that when, that's my bad then. So where it says with the new term of each board, it's referring to the Board of Ethics.
The Board of Ethics is appointed in conjunction with the Board of Supervisors.
Right.
The terms are concurrent.
I'm just reading that. I'm saying to myself, reviewed and updated. See, when it says updated, the update would be on our part, not on the Board of Ethics part.
Supervisor Conover, I'm just allowing this dialogue because you're still on the same topic. I don't want it to be
No.
confused with 3 questions.
So I guess I'm just wondering, and I would just put it out there that either you, Mr. Twilliger, or to the committee, anyone on the committee, that just to try to address the concern,
Mhm.
because if you wordsmith it, or if it's already in there and I'm not seeing it, then they're going to do that anyway, as a matter of fact, whether they do it now or do it 3 months from now.
My interpretation of that part E that I just read was that the board was the ethics board, that the ethics board would make recommendations to this board. But if that could be more clearly stated, then we could more clearly state it.
That's just
I'll leave it up to the board at large. I'm satisfied with that answer, that they can make a recommendation to the board, because they're the practitioners and they're the ones that are going to be dealing with these issues. And I don't think they should be hamstrung. They should be able to make recommendations to us to act on, should we see fit. But if you're saying that you think that's already built into this and it's a matter of the records, then I'm good with it.
I'd like to also defer to our clerk of the board she just wants to clarify your question, Supervisor Conover.
Oh, I was just agreeing with Ryan that I think that it's already there. They can make reports to anyone who requests one that would include the board. But if you wanted to insert the language that just said you wanted to add to the Board of Supervisors,
Well, I think,
we can.
yeah, I think they should be able to communicate with us on their own without necessarily responding to anyone from the Board of Supervisors.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that the language is clear in that regard. If it is, fine. Some of these sections you can read, maybe a few different ways. Or just insert the language said Board of Ethics can, in addition, make such recommendations to the Board of Supervisors as it feels is necessary for the proper implementation and administration of this law.
Supervisor Conover, I think your point's well taken. That's a clerical change. It does not change the substantive of the language, and both our administrator and clerk of the board believe it's already there, but they will make that clerical point, and I think that satisfies your concern.
It does.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor. I'd like to hear from other supervisors that have not already been heard. Supervisor McDevitt.
Just thank you, Madam Chair. I did attend the meeting yesterday, and I think I generally agree with the changes that are being made. I think they've done a good job. At the same time, I recognize what Supervisor Stroud was saying. Maybe we ought to just kind of delay another month. We're in no great rush here. I think Ron maybe makes the point. Okay, but he's asking some questions that maybe should have been incorporated into the initial document. So again, I attended the meeting. I think Jack and company did a great job, but I'm hearing some questions here that maybe need some reflection and some further study. And then maybe only a question. Are we going home today, or are we?
Supervisor McDevitt, I think on average, our board meetings have actually lasted longer in the past, but I think this is a good sign of the busy work that's being done and the importance of the special committee that was charged by this body to report to the full board today on this subject. So thank you, board, for making this such a priority. But
We are though, huh?
yeah, it's nice. We'll go home at some point, I'm sure, when we're done with our business. Are there other comments before I hear a second round of discussion? No, Supervisor Stroud.
Well, I think this whole thing makes my point. So 6 months from now, when we have to fill out these disclosure reports, it appears that we're going to be filling out a disclosure report 6 months from now. That's perhaps a little different than we have in the past. and that's okay. But I'm hearing the discussion. I want to thank Supervisor Diamond. There was apparently a lot of amending going on. I need time to absorb that. But again, why do we come up with these changes yesterday afternoon? We get them last night, and now we're going to set a public hearing. What's the rush? And, you know, something like this discussion is a tremendously good discussion. And it would be very appropriate for a workshop. But I'm just saying, 6 months from now, when we do have to have a final form, there's no rush on allowing the board to look at, possibly question, possibly agree on the proposed amending of the law before we set the public hearing. Because because substantial changes could be made between now and the public hearing, which makes the public hearing moot. But again, what's going on makes my point. Thank you.
Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. And what the conversation we had privately this morning is that I needed to leave at 12:30 today, but I've stuck around because this is important to me. And I wanted to make sure on the record to say that I also agree with Supervisor Stroud and other supervisors about the delay and the sense that we have no rush. But at the same time, this is something that was developed by a number of supervisors years ago. For us to not understand what they were looking for, shame on them for not being clearer, but shame on us for maybe not understanding one of the reasons why they put that in. My experience is that when policy is written, there's always unintended consequences. And it could be that these changes were made to the document because of some consequence that happened that we're not aware of. So we need to think carefully about how we go forward with this. And I agree, what this committee did was work hard at trying to develop a changed financial disclosure form that serves the purpose of what we think we need to be doing in the future. Having this time constraint by saying that this committee dissolves today, we also have a government ops committee that, from my understanding, was supposed to be dealing with all local law revisions and changes. We could always refer it to that committee that I sit on, and I'd gladly support the discussion of moving forward with different ideas or other questions or modifications in regard to this. But again, I do need to leave, and I apologize for that, but I do want to be on record that I will not support moving forward with the public hearing.
So
Thank
noted. County Administrator Moore, then Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, I did go back and read the committee minutes from 2014 when the current form was adopted to get a sense of that as to why we have the current form. They started out that year with different ideas on the form, and they had several meetings. I believe Supervisor Conover may have read these minutes as well, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But basically, they had some ideas as to what they wanted to do. It was controversial. They came back 4 or 5 months later, and they defaulted to a form that was on the state comptroller's website, which is the form we have right now. I believe Martin Affordoo was county attorney at the time, and he threw that out there as a way to say, okay, let's get away from this debate. Let's do what the state comptroller has on their website. That's what we have now.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I would like to commend the Board of Supervisors and the Special Committee for delivering this document as prescribed by motion last month that we did meet and this was put together. So we did meet a deadline, and here it is before us. So we should compliment ourselves for getting that done. My main concern about the ethics disclosure form is that it followed the order of the ethics code, and it does. And we must remember that the disclosure form does not replace the code. It is the code that the ethics board would look at. What the ethics disclosure form does is help the ethics board start a process if there is a complaint. And they may get more information as needed. So the disclosure form itself does not prescribe what, how, where, when, why a person listed in the schedule does anything. That's the code. So we should be focusing on the merit of the code itself. The disclosure form is utilitarian. It is to be able to help an ethics board in their deliberations when there is a complaint, and they are going to compare it to what is in the code. And it is the code that is going to guide their decisions on whether a person is compliant or non-compliant with the code of ethics. I think the simplified form, which in essence is not much different than what has originally been here. It is just slimmed down. It is not castrated. It is just slimmed down. I think it's worth adoption at this point in time.
Thank you, Supervisor Leggett. Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you. So this very board a month ago said, Mr. Diamond, we're going to put a special committee together, come back on July 16th. That happens to be today with a new or with a updated financial disclosure report. You did exactly what this board asked you to do. In fact, you did a great job, you and the committee. Yesterday, 60% of the supervisors were at this very meeting and all agreed. You did a phenomenal job. 60%. Yesterday, we were at the meeting when you went through the review again. So I am 100% in favor of going forward, have the public hearing, and let the public tell us what they think and what they don't think. But this board, for now to say, oh, by the way, we want you to come back July 16th, and now you've done it, done a phenomenal job. Yeah, but let's wait another couple of years. What the heck? I mean, it makes no sense to me. We gave you a deadline. You did a phenomenal job. 12 supervisors were at that very meeting yesterday and all agreed. Now we got a couple of supervisors that want to delay and so forth. I'm not quite sure why. I still haven't figured that out. But the bottom line is all this does is allow us to have a public hearing. That's all it does. Is allows us to go forward with a public hearing. Now, I don't know why that scares some people, but I think that's a good thing. So I'm going to be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further discussion. I would like to call the question. Hearing no further discussion. Yes, sir. We are voting for a motion to bring this to the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have one abstention. And as a reminder for those that are not here and absent, they do count as a no vote, correct, Amanda?
Well,
When they're not here.
it doesn't necessarily count as a no vote. It just counts against the total the same way a no vote would count.
Okay. Thank you.
I would note that floor resolution number 1 is now 297 and floor resolution number 2 is 298.
And were there any abstained? I did not ask. Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you. Now, other discussion on resolutions before us today?
Can you get me some no-dos?
If the board wishes, I am happy to entertain a brief motion, a break for coffee, stretching legs. No, I'm hearing no, so we're gonna keep going. Okay, discussion on resolutions. Supervisor Stroud.
Yes, I'd like to speak to Resolution 259. 259 is the amending of the Next Camp Solar Agreement. And it is a dramatic change in what this board approved, a dramatic change. A $1,411 change for lot 1 per acre. There's 28 acres. A $1,634 change for site 2, 22 acres. So you're talking about a potential change here of $2.4 million. I don't know about you, but to me, that's a lot of money. That is something that we need to take very seriously. I'm thinking that this needs an independent review, an independent assessment by a consultant familiar with this field to tell us this is a good deal or not a good deal. Keep in mind, this is a $2.4 million change from what we approved. Next month, or as soon as next month, we may hear the new block package. Block 17, they say is gone by. Block 18, which is forthcoming, could be the same as block 17. We don't know. But they say that NYSERDA will come out with that next month or in September. It's really at that time. So when you're talking about something like this, it requires due diligence. It reminds me of the Siemens report. And that board then decided they didn't need an independent consultant's report either. And you know where that took them. This is a $2.4 million potential change. I'm just saying, why don't we delay it till August or table it? That way we may know what NYSERDA's block 18 is going to be. And then we can get something more firm rather than accepting something less firm. And it would give us a month to have a consultant. And I don't think it's going to be expensive. Take a look at this proposal, compare it to other proposals in the state, come back with us and say, listen, what they're proposing actually is pretty good. Or they may say something else. But I don't want to get into another Siemens situation. I want a professional consultant's expertise review what we're doing. What you're voting on today, and I'm going to vote to table it. We need more information before we can make a $2.4 million judgment. So I herein make the motion to table 259.
I will second that.
A motion to table, although I believe it's a, Amanda, you'll have to remind me the correct term. But in this instance, a motion to table does allow discussion. It does take precedent. It is seconded by Supervisor McDevitt. And at this point in time, I will have to ask for,
Point of order. That does not discuss.
excuse me, you need to stand for point of order.
Tabling a motion.
Excuse me, you're
no
out.
discussion.
Supervisor McDevitt, do
Yes,
you have a point of order?
yes, I do.
Please stand and state it.
The point of order.
Please
is-
stand and state your point of order.
I'll sit and state my point of order.
We don't need to follow then Robert's rules. That's fine. Please go ahead.
The tabling motion is a tabling motion. There is no discussion on a tabling motion. No debate.
If the board will so indulge me, I'd like to take a moment to pull up our right. Are you making a motion to are you making a motion to a certain date? Is that your motion, Supervisor Straugh?
I would like to make a motion to the Board of Supervisors meeting in August.
So you would like to make a motion to the full Board of Supervisors meeting in August. What is the date of that meeting? August 20th. And Supervisor McDevitt, is that the motion that you are seconding?
Basically, I'm just, my motion is to table. So
Your motions are not in agreement.
All
If
right.
you have another second to
Mine is
his
the
motion to table to a certain date.
Until we get a consultant's opinion on this matter so that we do due diligence.
Supervisor Straugh, I've been advised by our parliamentarian that a motion to table to a certain date is not subject to debate, which is why I'm asking whether or not you are asking to go to August. If you are, excuse me, please let me finish. I'm trying to help here so that we all follow our parliamentarian rules. So if that is the motion you are making to table to a certain date, being the August 19th, 20th meeting, I'm asking, do you have a second for that?
Yes, I will second that.
You'd like to revise your second?
I would like to revise my second.
Okay, at this point, I assume you've withdrawn your point of order. If that is the case, then that does not require any type of, we are not allowed to debate according to our rules of the board, not Robert's rules, which are more restrictive as it relates to a certain date. So at this point in time, I will call a roll call on whether or not we will be Supervisor Strauss' motion to table to August 20th at our full board meeting. With the clerk of the board, I'm so sorry on this motion, according to our rules of the board, it is not subject to a debate when we make a motion to table to a certain date.
Can I ask a question?
I'm
No,
sorry,
thank you.
Supervisor Shepler.
Thank you.
I will come right back to you after, however.
Thank you.
This is on the motion to table resolution 259 to the August 20th board meeting. Supervisor Stroud,
Yes.
absent. Supervisor McGowan,
No.
Supervisor Beatty,
No.
Supervisor Thomas,
No.
Supervisor Shepler,
Yes.
Supervisor Garrity,
Yes.
Supervisor Conover,
Yes.
Supervisor Leggett,
No.
Supervisor Diamond,
No.
Supervisor McDevitt,
Yes.
Supervisor Bramer,
No.
Supervisor Bruno,
No.
Supervisor Driscoll. Oh, I'm sorry, he's absent. Supervisor Frazier,
Yes.
Supervisor Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver.
No.
A resolution, the motion to table fails. There are only 290 in favor.
So let's go back to the discussion on the resolution. Are there other people that would like to be heard in the discussion regarding this resolution before us? I saw Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor Shepler. I said I would go to you first. Supervisor Shepler, Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor Garrity, Supervisor Conover. Then I need to mark my list. Supervisor Shepler.
Well, this was going to be in question too, if we were going to table it until the August meeting. My question herein lies is $2.4 million is a very large increase over what was originally approved by the board. I would like to see some sort of attention made to this and find out why the $2.4 million increase is so sudden. And if we're not going to table it, then how can we vote on it if this is in question?
This is a discussion time for the resolution before we vote on it. The motion table failed.
I understand that, but what I'm asking is it failed, but there's still a question of $2.4 million out there that's not been answered.
So that discussion is taking place right now. Would you like me to ask perhaps Supervisor or our Superintendent Hajos to answer your question?
Yes, please.
Certainly, Superintendent Hajos. And I'm watching hands go up in order.
So as I had said earlier, when the initial proposals came in, NYSERDA had what they refer to as a Block 17 grant. They started at Block 1 when this whole program started, and they're up to Block 17. They haven't necessarily said there's going to be a Block 18, but Block 17 was closed as of May 10th. When we did the negotiations with Supervisor Leggett, Supervisor Stroud, and Supervisor Wild, they all knew from each one of the proposers that there was a chance that the Block 17 would close, and that they would come in with, each one of the proposers had said, we don't guarantee this price if that block closes. So that's the money that Supervisor Shaw is referring to, is they were looking for an incentive. I think the incentive to them might have been a $3 million incentive to them. And once that block closed and they couldn't get into that block, that's where we came up with the lower base rate.
May I ask a question, Madam Chairman?
If it's in response to your initial
Yes, it is.
question.
I do sit on this committee, and I was not a part of the group that had the initial meeting with the folks and made the decision. But it was my understanding that we came back in sufficient time to approve this at the Block 17 rate. what happened between our approval and now that we missed it? I thought we.
It wasn't, we weren't trying to make it. They were trying to make it, but it's a matter of them. They had to do and I believe, again, it was talked in negotiations. They had to do a contract with National Grid to be able to get into that substation. There was a process that followed that. And again, they expected this block to be open till August 1st, give or take, based on what they had seen in the past in history, that it was about 6 months on an average for each one of these blocks to fill up.
So there was no delay on Warren County's behalf. It was a delay on National Grid's behalf.
Well, I don't necessarily say it's a delay. There's a time frame that it takes to get this process going. There's a time frame for National Grid to give them approval on their application. I believe we had the signatures done fairly quickly for them to get the application into National Grid to be able to get into that substation.
Thought we met the deadline. So I'm still not clear on why there's the increase.
Again, it's not our deadline. It was their deadline to get into the block. And again, there's a process to follow. I mean, it takes engineering and stuff to get that process ready for National Grid. They were doing their work all along. It's just the block closed almost 2 months ahead of time before they expected it to close.
I think those were good background questions, Supervisor Shepler, and after other people ask, I'm happy to come back to you for additional.
Thank you.
Next in line, I had Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I had concerns about this too, was seeing the drop in the revenue that was coming to the airport. And I mean, I want to say first, I'm fully in support of us going forward with the solar project. I think it's a great project, great idea, great use of the land, great way to bring renewable energy to our area. I think it's a community solar project, right? Is it? Well, whatever.
I believe it is, but
Either way, that's not here nor there. It's revenue that it's going to be bringing, and it is bringing the renewable energy source. So I think it's great, but I was concerned about from a financial standpoint. So I talked to Supervisor Beatty, and he said he dug into it. And the bottom line is it's still above, even at the reduced rate, we're still above the next highest proposer. So even if we went back to the other people who had proposed, we're still getting the best rate out of this company. And hopefully it'll go higher if they can get any of those other incentives from NYSERDA. So I'm a little discouraged that it has to go down, but I'm still in support of this proposal's idea for the two, and especially because they're covering both the parcels that we asked for. And to me, that's the bottom line.
Thank you, Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah, to quote my fellow supervisor a couple doors down, I don't want to see another boondoggle happen to us over there at the airport. I just wonder why we don't go to NYSERDA, or have we gone to NYSERDA and asked them what the potential of them opening up? We're basing this on what a company that's trying to sell us a project. Why don't we go to NYSERDA and then point blank ask them if there's going to be changes to the way they set up those blocks? And also, we didn't cause this, I believe. You're saying it's the negotiation between NYSERDA and National Grid, or this company and NYSERDA. Has anybody gone to NYSERDA to try to pin them down to say if they're going to change, what do you call these blocks?
block grants.
I'm very leery of solar. I don't even want to touch solar. I don't even want to go near a solar panel. And I don't want a boondoggle.
Supervisor, is that a question for our superintendent?
Yeah, it is. Have we
Superintendent
gone to
Hatos.
NYSERDA?
So me specifically, no, I have not gone to NYSERDA, but I've been on NYSERDA's website, and any supervisor here can go into NYSERDA's website as well. The block grants are closed, and they're not sure what their next grant. I'm not sure that they're not going to do another type of block grant, but we don't. And as Dallas had explained from NextAmp, no one knows when that is. They had discussions about it. They're assuming it's going to be August, September timeframe that may come about. And that's why they gave us the sliding scale within the resolution that you have today that says, hey, if we get 3 cents more, it's going to be this. If we get 6 cents more, it's going to be this. If we get 9 cents more, it's going to be this. But they don't know that number. They can't give us a number. That's why they gave us the sliding scale.
Does that answer that question, or do you have a different?
I just want to follow up.
Yes, sir.
Is NYSERDA a government group? It's part of the state, NYSERDA?
It's an executive agency.
So we have contacts within the state of New York in KFC or whatever, couldn't we go to them to put a little pressure on NYSERDA to try to give us direction on where they think we should go? I mean, I'm okay with what the committee who did this. I'm not going after the committee that negotiated this. What I'm saying is, we're basing it on what a bidder told us, that because the lack of getting this buttoned down with National Grid, right? But I would think that we would go to our government contacts to reach out to NYSERDA for us to give us a little idea. I would feel more comfortable. But gosh forbid, if we took this deal and all of a sudden they up the price, we'd have a boondoggle of epic proportions on our hands.
Well, then
That's it. That's all I'm
we'll
gonna say.
take that under advisement,
Thank you.
Supervisor. Yeah. County Administrator.
It's my understanding that my predecessor, in terms of comparing it to Siemens, my predecessor analyzed those bids himself without the engineers from DPW. And I know that Kevin and his team have spent time on this, at least from my perspective. If it's something Kevin and his team are comfortable with, it's something I'm comfortable with.
Supervisor Conover.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Supervisor Garrity. I certainly, I think it's a great project. I don't have any problem with this revenue, right? And that's all good. But I have to agree with Supervisor Garrity. It would seem to me that the Kevin and county administrator could give NYSERDA a call and at least find out. I mean, I would hate to think that they open up the block, but we're foreclosed because we took a vote today. And now it forecloses us from their program, having their schedule of what they would pay additionally if we participate is different from knowing specifically what is or is not going to be grandfathered and under any new, if there's going to be a new program and what is going to be grandfathered under that. And we may be reading something, all projects that have not been awarded or projects where you've not entered into a contract, which would be different, right? Or whatever. And it would seem to me that maybe if we could get that kind of information from people at NYSERDA, that would be most helpful to this supervisor. I could tell you that I'd hate to vote for something, and I think I'm prepared to support this. And we're in a month from now, per what Supervisor Stroh is recommending, we find out that but for that vote, we could have participated in a new block with NYSERDA. So I think it pays to be a little prudent here. That's my 2 cents for whatever's worth.
Superintendent.
It's not if we participate in it, because we are not participating in it. We're strictly getting a land lease. Who's participating in it is the company. It's a commercial grant with NYSERDA that we're not participating in. That's why they gave us the sliding scale. The sliding scale says that if NYSERDA comes out with whatever incentives they may come out with, based on what those incentives are, they will give it to us. So we're not participating in it. They are.
But again, I go back to the point, what if I just follow on? We don't know under a new block, I'm just parroting. I don't even know if I know what a block is in this respect, but I'm just saying, we don't know at this moment in time, if should they open up a new block, what would foreclose this company from participating in that block? That's my question.
Do you not feel that's been answered, or you're comfortable with having our county administrator and our county superintendent look into that for you?
I think unless 30 days is going to destroy us in some fashion, I sure would give it a few more weeks to ask a few prudent questions. I mean, that's, and again, I'm supportive to those that have worked on the project and are promoting. I'm completely supportive, but this part of this worries me a little bit.
Supervisor Conover, understood, and I'll come back to you. Still have additional. I think though, regardless of how this vote turns out, we will have our county administrator work with our superintendent very closely in looking into that. Anyone that has not yet been heard, Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation. this next camp is 12% better than any other proposal on the board. 12% better, even without the decreased 2.4 million. So it's still 12%. Now, I'm not great with numbers, but 12% to the good compared to the second next proposal is pretty solid. Now, if you want to start saying, well, what if down the road and what if down the road? So if you buy a car today for 20,000 and it goes on sale next month for 18,000, do you go back to the dealership and say, I want 2 more grand? I don't know, do you? I don't think they're going to give you 2 grand off. So, you know, I love when we start as a group start thinking, well, maybe down the road this will change. Well, maybe this will happen. Maybe we can get the state to do this or that. That's fine. But I can't foresee the future. I don't think anybody in this room can. Now, if you want to put in an amendment stating that if another block opens up and they qualify or something, I'm all for that. That makes sense to me. But hey, what do I know? So 12% better than the second place proposal, that does make sense to me. That is powerful. And when our county engineer says this is a good deal, and our county administrator agrees, and we now know what supervisors learned a new word, boondoggle, and that's good because he had a tough time with it for a while. So now that we know boondoggle now has been learned by some people, I don't see how this is a boondoggle when we have our top people signing off on it. And the numbers prove that it's better than the second place proposal, much less the third place proposal, much less the fourth place proposal. But my question to you, Mr. Ajos, is there a downside financially by waiting 6 months?
Is that a question for the superintendent?
Yes, it is.
I'm not sure that I can answer that. I guess I can, and I can say, first of all, it's, you know, I'm recommending NextAmp, and I did recommend NextAmp based on what I did with the negotiating team. And again, as I stated earlier, there was a criteria for rating are basically what we consider the top 3 proposals. And 80% of it was price. And then there was another 20% that was, as I said before, environmental, and basically the ability of that firm to be able to do that, that company to be able to do that work. In 6 months' time, my thought would be that, and this is just my thought, and I think Dallas basically said this in our committee meeting, and Supervisor McGowan can correct me if I'm wrong, NextAmp would pull out. If NextAmp pulls out and the application is removed from National Grid for that substation, it will be gone because there's probably 2 or 3 more projects in the works. I believe there's one in the Warren Washington Industrial Park, and I also believe Vic Macri has a potential to be doing some solar in that area as well. And if they get into that substation, that would eliminate basically anybody else into that substation.
Very good. I need to just check and make sure. Supervisor Leggett, have you already been heard on this matter? I do not see where you have been. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unlike the Chairman of Finance, I am good with numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Leggett.
So, but I appreciate him figuring out the 12% more. If we follow our purchasing and procurement policies, we've gone all through this, and we would have taken the highest or the best value in this case. And it does come out even without Block 17, which all applicants were concerned about getting in the first place. And all applicants, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, were basing their offer on getting into Block 17. They were also, and this is the important part, they were also basing their price on being able to get onto the grid and onto that substation and beating other people, getting in line with National Grid, making their application in before the amount of capacity for that line going down to, what's the name of the substation?
Whatever. Sorry, I don't know. It's Queensbury Avenue substation.
Yes. That was key for the airport to be able to have any solar on it, that there was capacity on that line. And that is, so that was what prompted us, Supervisor Shepherd, to actually get going a little bit more quickly. That was one of the more impelling factors. Block 17 was as well. But getting in line, making sure that we can get electricity from the airport into the grid. With all of that, I am, what we must look at this, that sure, we're not getting what we had hoped for in the very beginning, but we are getting more than any other proposal that came before us at that time, in spite of the decrease that was prompted by Block 17, and I would support this proposal.
Thank you. I understand this is a very important discussion, and I want to continue to remind you that we are going to do our best to follow Robert's rules and the rules of our board. And I'd also like to say that while Robert's rules requires any member typically to speak when addressing the board standing, and there's some sections for points of order standing, I apologize, Supervisor McDevitt. We don't consistently have that practice. So for those of you that would like to call point of order, I'm happy to take it while you are seated, in the spirit of this discussion, which I expect we're going to have in a moment. Supervisor McGowan, you have not been heard. The floor is
Thank you,
yours.
Chairman. I hope you're all aware, but the Saratoga racetrack is open. And today I decided to come to the board meeting instead of being there for the opening after doing my studying, hoping to bring in the big money. But as we all know, and I think, you know, I'm not a big gambler, and I like to work with the numbers. I put together, I thought, a really good team to discuss this all and coming through with the awareness that everybody really had an understanding is we really didn't know until the end of what was going to happen with this block. So for my whole understanding, you know, to try to make it simple to the constituents out there, is basically it's a race to the end. You know, it's a race to get everything in, to get it all locked down, to get into this block. We're racing for Block 17. Will there be another race? You know, maybe. Will it rain? Will the track be sloppy? Will it change the results? Will we get that money? The way I'm looking at it is I don't look at this as a boondoggle in a sense. You know, the Siemens was totally different, but we are being guaranteed more money at the lower rate than was coming in with the other solar companies. We do have a sliding scale in there, and the sliding scale is going to give us any incentives that come up. But the main thing I want to say is that if we don't act on this and NISEC pulls out, we go back to the gate and we don't know what the weather's going to be. All right. We don't know who the jockey's going to be. And we don't know if the horse is going to be in tip-top shape. And I hate to compare that to Saratoga, you know, racetrack, but I think we're all familiar and people on the, we have something. I think we hold our guns, we move forward and we pray for the best. And hopefully when we come to the finish line, all right, the purse will look better for us than it does now. But right now we have a guaranteed purse. And I'm afraid if we pull out, we won't even get to the gate.
Thank you, Supervisor McGowan. Unless there's other discussion from people that have not been heard, our rules of a board in the interests of the discussion that we're having does allow us to move forward and close discussion on this.
I've been raising my hand.
You've spoken during the first round. Are you asking for a point of order?
I needed to.
Right, you've spoken on this issue already.
Mr. Leggett got 2 opportunities.
No, we did not. But if you have a point of order, I'm happy to hear it. State your point.
Point of order, I just want to speak to this. We do have an agreement with this company.
Normally, I would, sir, it's a state your point.
It's 6. I am.
What is your point where I violated the
Agreement that
rules?
We currently have is.
Supervisor Stroud, I'd like to address your point of order. It is a point of order I just said I'm not going to require the standing for our points of order. I understand you have one. What is your point of order?
I want to speak.
Where have I violated the rules? That is the point of order.
Well, that's just my turn.
Well, I'm sorry, I'd like to decide on that. You've asked me to then decide on that I'm violating that. In the interest of discussion and moving our board meeting forward, could you please hand me the rules? The rules of the board state that all members should have an opportunity to be
All right,
heard.
well, we do have.
On
an
a
agreement
first-
With them for 6.2
Supervisor
million.
Stroud, you are more than welcome to
If you
ask for an
vote on
appeal.
this, You're agreeing to $4.2 million. We
Supervisor
already
Stroud.
have an agreement with them. You're not.
Supervisor Stroud.
Point of order.
Agreement with. them.
State your point, Supervisor Garrity.
Stop. Both of you, stop.
You know,
Stop.
you know.
Stop
what
for a
this
minute.
is.
Just take a deep breath. You know,
I just want an opportunity.
please stop, just for a minute. Come on, this is not helpful. It's 1:30.
Yeah, well, and calling on
Okay.
me last or
Come on,
not
guys.
calling me
Please.
at all is not.
Everyone, thank you Supervisor Garrity. Your point is not heard. It is overruled. We've had discussion on this matter, an extensive discussion. Everyone has had one opportunity to speak on this. If you'd like to appeal my decision as chair, you may do so. Otherwise, we'll move forward to discussion on other resolutions. Supervisor Stroud, what resolution?
284.
Resolution 284. Yes, sir.
A 284, what is being offered is that we only do official business and we do nothing else. But in.
It's Supervisor Stroud. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Supervisor McDevitt. I'm trying to pay attention to Supervisor Stroud. Please continue.
But for this meeting, we have, in the correspondence, we have an email from June Maxim, the North Country Gazette. And in this email, it's got a lot of information, and she's obviously done a lot of investigation that needs to be addressed. Now, I perhaps wouldn't have known of this unless it was in the correspondence. Why are we altering our correspondence program? Because I think it's worked well. It hasn't been duly unburdensome. So I'm going to be opposed to the correspondence policy as being proposed today. That's resolution 284. I've got more when you're ready.
So noted. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on 284?
Was that a request?
Supervisor Conover.
Was that a request for roll call on 284?
I haven't gone to the request for roll calls yet, but I'm happy to take that at any time. Are you asking for a roll call, Supervisor Conover?
I'm trying to understand what Supervisor Stroud is saying, but yeah, I would say, so therefore there should be a roll call on 284.
Well,
Otherwise, how will you register?
If you're requesting a roll call on 284 by Supervisor Conover, please. Is there any other discussion on 284 from any of the members of the board? Hearing none, I'll close discussion on 284. Other discussions on resolutions. Supervisor Stroud.
287.
287. Yes, sir.
287, we're proposing to change Schedule A. We have a Schedule A that's worked for decades quite wonderfully. But what bothers me is the restrictions that we're placing for the expenditure of county occupancy tax revenues in connection with conventions, trade shows, and events shall only contract for participation in a multi-day convention. If it's a one-day, it's great convention. We're not going, it's got to be multi-day. Also, it says no event shall exceed $50,000. Also, it says only those sponsors of the conventions will enter into contracts with at least 50% of the funding available or committee. I mean, and then it goes on that there's going to be a $350,000 limit. It's all talking about limits. Everything's got to be due by November 1st and will be decided at the December committee meeting. I mean, who decided that everything needs to fit in a very tight box? What's been working, we keep it. Why propose something that I can see there's going to be a lot of problems with it? So
again, I'm opposed to this, and I'm going to ask for a roll call when the agenda says request for roll calls, which is the next item.
So noted. Are there other discussions on 287? Supervisor Conover?
I just want to be clear. Item 287 exclusively deals with the appropriation of funds distributed by Warren County. We're not talking about changing the definition of eligibility relative to the funds received by the town. I just want to be clear.
Supervisor Conover, if I may answer that, 287 deals solely with the boilerplate language that was passed when the occupancy law was passed for the contracts. And our county attorney has said that really is a limitation for him. For example, Supervisor Hogan had a request where she was asking for website dollars, but yet she had to agree to take all garbage out. So our county attorney had told us that the boilerplate language that was approved by resolution years ago provided him with some hardships in making those contracts. So he's just asked to be able to do it in a form to be approved by the county attorney, which is how many of our other contracts read. It was in an effort to assist the county attorney's office, does not speak to either the municipality or the county funds, but our county attorney Twigler, is he still there? Would you mind confirming that, please, for Supervisor Conover?
Yes, I mean, my understanding here is that this is just for the form that we have of a contract with, I call them the special event organizers. Those have, it's not for the towns, definitely not.
Apply to the towns, okay.
Right, just for like the Americade and those organizations. Those.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Conover. I know they did spend a lot of time on that in personnel and in tourism as well. Thank you, County Attorney Twilliger. Are there other discussions regarding 287, which is our OCTEX and tourism resolution? Okay, hearing none on that, I'll close discussion on 287. Is there discussion on other resolutions before us today? Hearing none, I will ask for roll calls. We already have one roll call that is registered. Amanda, that resolution is for, I believe, 284. So there's a roll call, please, on 284. Other roll calls, Supervisor Stroud.
I'd like a roll call on 259, 287.
Just give us 1 second, please. 259. 287.
Yes.
Okay. Others?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Roll calls for any others? Okay, hearing none, I think we'll move on to voting on resolutions. Is everyone back in the room that's still here?
Claudia's not.
Claudia's right behind you.
Oh, there you are. Sorry.
No. No. Give us just one moment, please.
Okay. Resolution 257, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
absent. Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Leggett is absent, Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt.
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
What does that do?
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 258, amending Warren County budget for 2021 for various departments within Warren County. Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond.
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt.
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 259, amending agreement with Nexamp Solar. Mr. Stroud,
No.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Abstain.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes, but make those phone calls, please.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
No.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 281, amending table of organization as amended earlier in the meeting. Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes.
Yeah.
Resolution 284, setting policy on correspondence to the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Stroud,
No.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
No.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
No.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 287, revising and reestablishing criteria for expenditure of county occupancy tax revenues. Mr. Stroud,
No.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
With the understanding that was during discussion, yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 288, authorizing appropriation of funds from the Rehab County Buildings Reserve to the building's budget. Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 290, increasing capital project H390 County Bridge and Culvert Projects. Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 291, increasing capital project H396 East River Drive. Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolution passes.
Can we move items 292 through 294? Is that allowed?
Without objection? Hearing none? Yes.
Okay. This is for 292 through 294. Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver,
Yes.
resolutions passed. 295 was withdrawn, and 296 is adopting the approving SUNY Adirondack budget. Supervisor Stroud,
Recuse. I'm on the SUNY Adirondack Board of Trustees.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt.
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver.
Yes.
Resolution passes. I believe that's all we have. So collective on the rest.
You asked for the collective vote.
No, you do not.
Could I please have a collective vote on the rest of the remaining resolutions? All that signify in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Hearing none, that carries. At this point in time, it brings us to the privilege of the floor and public comment. Again, I want to remind everyone, thank you for following Robert's rules, for following the procedures for points of order, and for a respectful meeting. Privilege of the floor, I saw Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. You know, Supervisor Garrity raised something to me earlier, and I just want to put on the record today that our real property director is working with a potential buyer for the Mullen site. So I want to put that out there, and I look forward to her being able to bring that person forward to committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members for privilege of the floor. Supervisor Thomas.
Yeah, I have an issue. As you know, the county authorized a communication tower behind the Stony Creek Town Hall. And the county has about $250,000 worth of equipment sitting in that building there that's under warranty, that the warranty is tick-tocking on and probably going to expire. And the reason is because Verizon is having difficulty getting this tower operational. Everybody else, Frontier and National Grid and the county and Digitronics and all of them have done their job. And the problem is with Frontier or Verizon here in Queensbury, they have to run fiber to a box down here on the municipal property. And for some reason, that doesn't seem to be getting done. And we're going on, 7 months now. And I think it's time that, I bring this out to everybody here and we have some action here because this is just nonsense.
Do you have would you like a letter sent on behalf of the board with no?
I'm not sure what the answer is to it.
Okay.
I know, the sheriff's office has definitely tried to get them to move here and they keep pushing it back.
Supervisor Garrity, you have some
I
questions?
suggest the administrator call the Public Service Commission this afternoon and tell them to get this hooked up. There's no reason Verizon to do this to us.
Our county administrator, I know, has taken some action on this before now, so perhaps that's why it's here in front of us again, because we're still having some difficulties. Would you like to expand?
I guarantee you that if you call the Public Service Commission, they will take action.
I spoke with the governor's office about this on Friday, the 4th, which was the last day I was here before I took my 4 weeks. And I forgot about this. I never heard back from them. They were going to talk with Verizon directly and see what was going on, but I'll follow back up with them.
Public Service Commission.
Yeah.
Supervisor Thomas, if it's agreeable with you as well, pursuant to that conversation, we'll follow up with a letter on behalf of the board and advocacy to get that resolved.
Yeah, that's just fine. It's just that we need to put some pressure on somebody here and make this.
Understood. Can we make sure we do?
Or otherwise our warranty is going to expire and we're not going to know if this equipment works or it doesn't. And there's not going to be much we can do about it.
We'll jointly sign. Supervisor Thomas, he'll make that call today, then we'll jointly, along with you, sign that and get the ball rolling. Thank you for bringing it up. Privilege of the floor for other members today. Privilege of the floor for the public. Ms. Jones, I'm so sorry you waited this long. Floor is yours. I'm always happy to move the agenda, have you speak earlier if you would like, so you don't have to sit through all of that.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I've actually been able to answer some of my emails and take a few calls, but I neglected to thank Kevin Hajos and his group for making such a beautiful floral planting of the nice pink flowers up at the sign, in addition to putting in the pinwheels and helping Public Health put up our banner to memorialize Jones so her family and friends could see it after the funeral. So it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. Zach planted the flowers, and thank you very much. And I'm sorry I forgot to mention it earlier.
Thank you. It does look beautiful, Kevin. I hear pink was her favorite color. It's very nice. Are there announcements at this time? I just want to highlight that the things on your desk are from the NACO conference. Please consider joining a committee and enjoy the little things I brought back. Supervisor Garrity, Supervisor Shepler, I'll say Supervisor Smith.
Yeah, selfish, this next weekend, the 23rd and 24th will be the 58th year of the Smoke Eaters Jamboree. So anybody who's not busy next Friday or Saturday and want to drop a few dollars, come up and visit the Warrensburg Recreation Field on Library Avenue. That's my number one announcement. The other thing is, I keep reading about unvaccinated people getting COVID, and it's concerning to me because I know some unvaccinated people that just won't, we can't make them do it, but I think we need to, and I know we put an appeal out in our notices, but I think we as, whatever we can do to get people to take this seriously, and, we've had people, unvaccinated people in my community who work for us and still refuse to get the shot. And, hopefully they never get it again or never get the illness. But I just think it's important, if I'm to believe the news accounts, that vaccinated people, are less likely to get COVID. So I just, every day when you watch TV or pick up things, there's more people catching this terrible illness, and whatever we can do to convince people to get the shot, I think it's good.
How about
Supervisor Garrity. Supervisor Garrity has the floor. Supervisor Garrity, thank you for that compassionate message. We'll work innovatively with Supervisor Frazier and her committee. And just as an update for all of you, it doesn't look like, we're so grateful for our partnership with the state and our Mass Vac Center. But as we all know, that they are closing those. I'm sure that ours will be closed at some point in time. We're grateful for every week they continue to give us, and hopefully can work out a collaborative agreement. But thank you for that compassionate message. Supervisor Shepler.
Thank you. In lines with what Supervisor Garrity had to say, last month, the town of Thurman hosted a pop-up COVID injection site, and they're returning on the 19th to give the second vaccines to those who had the first one. Also, in speaking with Janelle Jones, they're opening it up if anybody wishes to come in and have a first vaccine on July 19th at 1:30. So that is available to them. If you know of anybody who wants to come in, or you think you know of somebody to share this, please, because we're more than welcome to have them come in. The second one that I have is I'm pleased to announce that the town of Thurman is having its monthly concert series again. It's the Monday evenings in the park, and it starts August 1st. It'll only be for the month of August, and it's from 7 to 9 p.m. Please join us. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And I know Don Lehman has been working on getting out those pop-up vaccinations at all the town halls. So hopefully that's helpful in spreading the word. Thank you. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that our Food Truck Friday, we will be having a pop-up COVID shot. We'll have an office set up with a hallway, and that'll be on July 23rd from 5 to 7. And it's a great opportunity because so far we've had 2 Food Truck Fridays, both rainy nights. The first night we had 1,300 people present, and the second night we had 1,800. So with the sun tonight and the nice weather, I just hope we can park them all. But anyway, so you're all welcome, and it's been a great success, great music and great food.
Great.
So,
Thank you. Are there other announcements from our board today? Great. Well, hearing none at this point in time, I'm going to call our most favorite motion, which would be a motion to adjourn. That motion is made by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Supervisor Smith, you might see all of us up in Oregon tonight then.
I do think the